Welcome to Forward Obsessed, where we talk to breakthrough business leaders and rising entrepreneurs about their journeys, origin stories, and aha moments. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Forward Obsessed. I'm your co-host, David Salinas, and today our guest is David Cancel. David Cancel was a Hispanic man born in the Bronx, would move to Queens. He and I hit it off because we were two peas in a pod. We have all of our New York history. He also grew up in the school of hard knocks. He'd go on to enter the technology world and be a part of 6 exited companies. Probably the most famous being HubSpot, which he joined as the CTO, recreating their products and taking that company from a $100 million valuation to a public company at $12 billion. You then go on to start Drift, which is currently the first company to focus on conversational marketing and AI. David is an incredible entrepreneur, walks us through all kinds of things. Most importantly, he was humble enough and gracious enough to invite us to his home in New York where we would film this episode of Forward Obsessed, which is the first time we've taken the show on the road. We hope you enjoy this show. Be sure to subscribe on all the platforms that you may watch or listen to us on. And thank you again for being Forward Obsessed.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forward Obsessed. We've got a new spot to be recording at today, thanks to our guest today, David Cancel. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, as we do in all Forward Obsessed order, take us through who is David Cancel?
Oh my God, where did
I need to go back. So we've done a little bit of research. So you were born in the Boogie Down.
Yes.
And then you moved to Queens. Where in Queens?
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. You ever been to Nick's Pizza out there?
Yeah, of course, all the time. Of course, all the time.
Yeah.
I grew up eating going to Nick's Pizza. We would go for lunch because I went to elementary school near there called Our Lady of Mercy, which is near Ascan.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
You know that's where they filmed the first Spider-Man? The scene where he runs.
I did know that. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I'm a Queens kid as well. Grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. My brother lived in Forest Hills on 67th Road, the buildings over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for quite some time.
No, I was born in the South Bronx. So I was born in the South Bronx like a million years ago. And back when it was like, burnt down buildings, looked like Beirut or something like that, really bad. And my mom got my dad to take a job in Queens, and he had a job. He worked in this building that gave us free rent. That's how we live in Forest Hills. But like we were like
superintendent.
Yeah,
my father was as well.
Yeah, and so like that's the only way that we moved to Queens. So like at the time, Forest Hills is like it evolves like everything else, but it was like super like nice and like an alien world for me. And I was an alien there, right? Because there was nobody there that looked like me in Forest Hills.
It's a big Jewish community.
Yeah, it was all Jewish when I was there. Yeah. The neighborhood was like split in half. The half that I lived in was entirely Jewish, and so like my little friends were named like Ophir and Ayelet and like
Ezra's.
Yeah, that's it. And then I lived between like 2 temples and young Israel over there. And then the other half of the neighborhood near Metropolitan Avenue was near Ascan was working class, Archie Bunker houses, like more like everyone. All my friends on that side where I went to school were like, their dads were cops or firemen like that. Yeah. If they were Italian, they were cops. And if they were, Irish, they were firemen. That was it. That's the only existence that I knew there.
What was it like? Because I grew up in Lindenwood, which was next to Howard Beach, was dominated by Italians.
All Italian.
Irish.
Yeah.
My mother was Jewish. My father was Peruvian. He was a superintendent. We had free rent in the building. So
Same.
I mean, we might be brothers from different mothers and fathers.
I think so.
And I always tell people, like, it was tough because you had to, for me, it was a fight to fit in because you literally had to fight to fit in.
Totally. Well, when I grew up, it was, there was no one. I never saw anyone. I mean, for that part of Queens is so different. Like now it's like, it was Jewish, Italian, and Irish, and I never saw anyone else.
And you're full-blooded Hispanic?
Yeah, and I'm Puerto Rican and Ecuadorian, and there was like 0 of 0, like aside from my brother who was younger, 5 years younger, like I never saw anyone on the street. I never saw anyone that was Asian unless, there were a couple of stores that were owned by, Korean and Chinese, and one of them were my friends, but like you didn't see anybody in the street that didn't look like that. So it was like a totally different world, so I felt like a total alien. And, of course, and the only reason we lived there was because my dad was the superintendent like you.
Were
Otherwise,
people friendly?
there's no way.
So I'm curious if they were the same, because how many buildings was it? Because my father managed 6 buildings.
It was one building, but it was a big building. It was probably, compared to the other ones, there was probably like 3 or 4 buildings.
Got it. So I know the ones that would, so they had like over north of 100 apartments.
Yeah.
So we had 6 buildings, 80 apartments in each building. But we knew everybody, which was a gift and a curse, because you could never get away with anything.
Yeah.
We were like, that's George's kid.
Well, I just went to the other side of the neighborhood. So like because like all my friends were over there, you know, in the building, like everyone knew us obviously because of my dad, but my mom was a dressmaker. And so like she created gowns and dresses and bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, like clothing for all the people that lived in the building, but also like people as far as like New Jersey, Pennsylvania would come. But her clientele was like 100% Jewish.
She worked for herself?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is like, you know, sounds fancy, but she just like worked at home and like worked 7 days, you know, pretty much 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Doing that. Yeah, but loved it. But it was like, that was to me like the creative part, because she was like super creative. She didn't do anything through patterns. She made her own design. She did all that kind of stuff. And she would do wedding gowns, beads, all this kind of stuff.
What about your clothes?
She did. Yeah. When I was a little kid, she would do all our Halloween outfits. And like when I was a really little kid, she would do some of our clothes.
Yeah. And your father was a superintendent. Was he, I imagine, was he a maker? Like, did he take?
Yeah, he was a construction type guy. My dad was more in and out, even though we lived there and he was a superintendent. He was like, I was really raised by my mom.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like come and go. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And then she went to school in Queens.
Yeah.
I read that you are, you went to college, but you dropped out?
Yeah, I went, I did drop out. I went to high school. I went to an all-boy high school near where you grew up in Queens called Artificial Malloy, which like was an amazing experience. Later I found out, now I think about it, I'm like, oh, it was like prison, because, you know, it was like a bunch of troublemakers, like who sends their kids to, back then they would like, you know, we had a dean of discipline, so they physically discipline you, like, you know, stuff you can't do now, you know, throw you into the locker, like grab you, do whatever. And your parents would be like, yeah, hit him again. Because he's an idiot. But like stuff that you can't imagine now, but like who would send their kids there, right? Like all, you know, troublemakers, right? And so like, so we had all these troublemakers from like Rockaway and like Howard. I had a lot of friends from Howard Beach and Ozone Park and all these places, but they were like all troublemakers. But it was a great experience because there were no girls. So like there was no one to show off for. So like no one actually fought, even though everyone was so different. Like everyone got along, so there'd be like metalheads and like Guidos and this and that, and there was no
girls to fight over.
There was no girls to fight over.
I'm surprised you guys didn't square off on the handball courts.
Yeah, we would play handball all the time. I grew up playing handball.
Remember when I first met him, he's like, well, we're going to go play handball today. I'm like, what?
What is that?
And he's like, there's one court in the whole state of Connecticut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all Spanish people. I get there, they're like, who the hell are you? I take my shirt off, like I'm in Queens.
Oh my God. That's what I grew up playing handball.
My head hurts, man. What are we doing?
No, I grew up playing handball in Queens, and then in the city we used to play on
West 4th?
West 4th, but also Spring Street over by Ben's Pizza over there. There's a court right there. So
I went to West 4th one time. You had to pay to get on the court.
Yeah.
And the guy, there was an old man there, and he beat
those are the worst ones.
Shit out of me. I was like, it was like he had a string on the ball and could send it to any spot on the wall he wanted to do it. And I was like, I thought I was good, and I was like, I am terrible.
No, we had the same experience. There would be these old like Puerto Rican guys, like really old. To me, they seemed like they were like 100 years old, and they would just like, it seemed like they didn't actually move. They would just make you run around the court, and these kids would be running around and falling and tripping and whatever, and they would just school you over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I always try to tell people when I moved to Connecticut, I found it hard to relate to a lot of people because they would tell me about their life. And our experiences growing up in the city is different.
So different.
Because like handball, they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, like now I meet kids and they're like, oh yeah, I played squash and padel. Yeah. And I'm like, we played stickball and handball.
Yeah, that's it. We only had 2 sports, stickball. No, it's a different existence. Yeah, but it helped me later in like creating companies and stuff like that, because I was always used to being the outsider. I was always the outsider, so it didn't matter.
So curious. Your mom was Puerto Rican?
No, she was Ecuadorian.
She was from Ecuador.
Yeah.
And was she? She was a. Were you born here and she was born in Ecuador?
Yeah, I was born here, and then she moved here. She emigrated here, kind of in an adult life. So like she really only spoke Spanish, and so.
What was her background? Why did she decide to send you to private school? Because like it wasn't even an option for us, and like I'm curious as to like.
I think my mom was like so scared or whatever from the experience that growing up in the South Bronx.
Yeah.
Because where we grew up, it was wild. Back then, it's hard to like, like at this point, New York's so different, everything's so different, and I'm so old. I'm just like, it's hard to like explain to people because they can't even like grasp it. I'm like, this was like crazy,
People that have $1 million places in Bushwick, I was like, that's the first time I've ever got shot.
I know. We used to.
Have you heard a bullet go past your head?
Yeah,
I have.
Yeah, I have too in Bushwick. Yeah, we would be so scared going to Bushwick. That's another story. Go to Bushwick to go to the Rastas, and yeah, and then we go in and freaking go in and run out and like get back in the car and speed out of there. It's so scary. And bullet fire, you'd hear bullet fire.
I think they would do it on purpose.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh,
you scared these guys.
Should have shot at you on purpose.
Oh my God, it was so scary. But it's hard to, explain. But like the South Bronx was insane, it was crazy. And so like she was so scared of that I think, she just wanted us to have a totally different experience. And so she got us to go to first Catholic elementary school, Catholic, and then this Catholic all-boys school.
There's two of you?
Yeah, me and my brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we see where the creativity comes from. One of the things I've always appreciated about I feel like the one thing that is consistent in every company that you've built and been a part of is just you always think differently in terms of, and you really understand like culture and people and design and that sort of thing. So I can see now the creativity from your mom, the upbringing, again, I know a lot about your background, so I'm sort of related to that now. It's interesting.
I'm so curious. Let's dig into that a little bit though, because I always think that part of the reason why I'm able to move around people, right, of all different socioeconomic statuses is because of this city.
Yeah.
Right? Like
totally.
Like and reading people. Are you good at reading people?
Very good. Yeah.
Like can you look at somebody and tell immediately like if they're full of shit?
Yeah. So much so that so many people in my life will be like, oh, you're like a shaman. I'm like, I'm not a shaman. They're like, how do you read? I'm like, I don't read.
How did you know that?
It's right there. Just like look at them. Yeah.
When we were growing up, you knew if you're walking on a block, you knew that the person over there, they're going to ask you for money or they're going to try and steal from you.
Yeah.
Right. You sort of felt the energy of people, and you if you were tuned in, there was the kids that were oblivious that always got I knew kids that got robbed 5-6 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like never.
Like
I always was able to fight my way out, or I felt it coming, and I'd be able to maneuver around it, or fight my whatever.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the city can do to young people.
Plus, you're forced to. I think the thing I appreciate about New York is that you're forced to interact with every level. So every level has to interact with every level to some degree. And it's not like that in most other places that's really segregated. When I moved to Boston, it was like, holy shit, where am I? Like, that felt like so segregated to me. Yeah. But the reality is most of the world feels like that. New York is just that special place you're describing.
Yeah. I think it might be losing that a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It was special. Nowadays, I couldn't even imagine. You have kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, how many?
17 and 11.
Okay. Did you raise them in Boston or here?
Boston.
Yeah. I have 3, and I can't imagine raising them in the city anymore.
No.
Like, I just, like, for me, I'm like, I like what we have, and the cul-de-sac, and the park, and like, and all that shit.
That's all the stuff you didn't have.
I think, you know what, is all I wanted. I didn't need, like, some people go for like 25 acres.
Yeah.
I'm like, just give me 1 acre.
Yeah.
Like, I had a 2-bedroom apartment that we turned it. Yeah, we turned the dining room into a bedroom.
Yeah,
like
same. Oh my God, my brother's bedroom was in the living room.
Exactly.
Did you water your asphalt?
Did
you water your asphalt?
No, we lived in the building. We didn't water anything, but like that's how we made money. My father. All right, if this happens, we may have to extend the show for another episode. But so my father was a superintendent. When it snowed, we never went to school.
Yeah,
my dad would give us shovels and go out on the street, and we'd make money.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
A little bit, yeah, not that much.
That was like we used to clean up because the people would get plowed in on in parallel parking.
Yeah,
the trucks would come plow you in, and then they couldn't get to work. So we'd get $25 to $50 a car, depending on how desperate you were to get to work.
Yeah.
And that's how my brother and I made money.
A lot of money back then.
That's a lot of money. Oh yeah. No, I did a little bit of that, but my dad never wanted. It was kind of straight. My dad, I guess he never wanted me to do what he did.
Okay.
And so he was always like, would get me to like, go away, don't do this, whatever, like that. Not in the most loving way, but like didn't want me to. Now I can understand what he was doing. He never wanted me to do it. He didn't want me to do it. And I helped him a lot in like, construction stuff, but like he didn't want me to do it. So I was always like off doing something else.
I have those fucked up lessons that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All those fucked up lessons that I had those problems with my father as well. And then later in life, I was like, I see the meaning.
Yeah.
Like it took me 40 years to see the meaning in him saying something like dismissing every problem I ever had as that's bullshit, Davey. He goes, that's bullshit, Davey. Don't pay no attention to it. And now I'm like, he was teaching resilience.
Yeah.
He was teaching you not to accept the problems. I used to say something and he'd be like, delete that.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I want to talk about it then.
Yeah.
And he had his mindset and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's funny.
No, speaking of work ethic, so I know one of your first jobs was in a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
It seems like work ethic and family values is something that really kind of binds the two of you folks together. But you got a really nice compliment when working in that warehouse from the owner of it. So take us through that. Like what was that about?
So I had like, probably like you or like everyone, I had just a million crazy jobs. I've been like working, I moved, this has been the longest stretch that I haven't had a daytime job since I was like 11, I think, because I was like paperboy, New York Post, like I did every job possible to make money. But I worked in supermarkets, multiple, 3 or 4. I worked in dairy aisle and frozen food. And then I did, I was looking for another job. I was a messenger. I did some other stuff. And then my friend George, who I grew up with, Lee, his mom, I couldn't find a job. His mom said like, oh, maybe I can find you a job in this warehouse on Woodside. And, they're both from Chinese and in China. And they were like, she's like, I'm going to get my friend Sam to get you a job. And so like, I didn't know who this was. I get this job. It turns out I'm the only person that works for Sam. Sam will not hire he's Taiwanese businessman. He will not hire anyone who's not Chinese. So like, and he would always, he was my first mentor. His name is Sam Lee, unrelated to George Lee. But like, so like he was this Taiwanese businessman. He would be the hardest working person there. He would always tell people he was the manager, that he didn't own it. But because I knew through the family connection, I knew that he owned not only that business, but he owned 3 other businesses. He was the first like multimillionaire that I knew. I never met anyone like this. And so he would always be like, oh, I'm not the manager, I'm not this. He worked super hard. And he was the first one that like took an interest in me and like just kept pushing me. I mean, he was brutal. He was like super hard to work for, but he would just keep giving me lessons, keep pushing me, and then like keep giving me responsibility. And then all of a sudden, like I was doing like, I wasn't just unloading trucks. I was like doing all the ordering. I was dealing with the people. I was like being the front. I was like doing all that stuff. And so there's so many lessons, I think, like that I look back now on how to manage people and how to push people, how to like mentor them. They all came from Sam Lee. And the comment that you were talking about was like when I left, because he was like forcing me to go back to college. I ended up dropping out, but he was like pushing me to go back to college. He got me into computer science. This guy was like not only running all these businesses, he was like creating his own inventory system back like a bazillion years ago, like coding it upstairs by himself. And he would like pull me in and make me do it and then teach me. So like, when I left, the only thing he said to me, because he didn't talk much, he was just like, he's like, you know what? He's like, you work like a Chinese person. And I was like, oh my God, that was the highest. If you know anything, like, people that I know that have grown up similar, around similar people, that was like, that's the freaking highest honor there is. Because this man will not give you any compliment. He's like, and he would not hire anyone that wasn't Chinese, because he's like, nobody else works. And
They don't have the work ethic.
They don't have the work ethic. Nobody else could work for him.
You earned that compliment.
Yeah.
So now here you are, and you're going to school for computer science and accounting, right?
Yeah.
Of all things. So what ultimately, I mean, I'm guessing that's a pretty short story because you ended up dropping out. And
yeah, I dropped out in my senior year, but Queens College. So I went to Queens College. So I graduated high school. This was a million years ago, right? There's no like internet. I wasn't raised by anyone who went to college. I didn't know people that went to college. I didn't even know how you apply to college. I was like, how do you apply? How do you like pay for college? I had no idea. It just like felt, I mean, now it sounds so stupid because everybody knows everything, but I'm like, I have no idea. Finally, at the end, I figure out, I apply to this Queens College. I go to Queens College. I don't know anything about it. My mom's only dream for me was one thing, for me to be an accountant. And my mom, that's it. She's like, be an accountant. So I'm like, I don't want to be an accountant, but like
The suit and briefcase.
Yeah, that's right. She was like, because to her, she had no idea what accountant meant. She just meant that it was like, I would wear a suit, I'd have a briefcase, I'd have health insurance, which is the only thing she ever cared about. And then, so I go and study like accounting and computer science and did that for a few years. But, I never went to class. I was going from like a high school, which was like, there was no way to get out of this school. The high school I went to. This was like a military operation. They would drag you in. And there's nothing worse than a brother calling your house and talking to your dad and calling your dad to come in.
Yeah.
Right? A brother, wearing black robes with a freaking giant cross, like they get wild.
I never understood the Catholic, because I grew up in the Jewish and the Catholic home, so I never understood any of that shit.
Yeah.
But I knew like very few people that went to Malloy, and I knew it was tough. They weren't the happy guys that got off the bus. When the bus pulled up and we were playing handball and you saw them getting off, they weren't happy. The kids that went to prep or Christ the King, happy.
No, this is like a military thing, so you couldn't leave. So I go to Queens College. I'm like, nobody cares. Like nobody asked me anything, so I don't go to any classes. And but then I basically figured out that in the library they had an early web browser, which like I didn't know what it was at that point, which was a Mosaic and Netscape. And then from then on, probably like 2 years, I would go to college, I'd drive there. I was working full time at the same time and going full time, and I would go there and go to the library and stay until they closed, because I just became so obsessed with like, what is this?
And you were tinkering a lot, like building computers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was always tinkering, building computers, doing all that. But like, I was like, what is this thing? I basically like the hook for me was like, I created like this little, web page, whatever, web app thing. And back then the internet was so small that everyone would leave their email address at the bottom of the
Webmaster.
Webmaster. So because like there was no spam. There was like nobody on the internet. And so someone sent me, this guy from Russia sent me an email that you had to view in a terminal. So I'm like in a terminal, Pine. I'm looking at it, and it's this guy from Moscow. He says he's from Moscow. And he said, I checked out your website's really cool, man. That's all it said. And I was like,
I miss those days. Well, most people don't realize that.
Shit, that was what it was for me? It was like the first time that I made something and someone like reacted to it. I was studying computer science, but back then, the computer labs weren't connected to the internet. Yeah. So I was like, what is this?
And they were all theory too. Like,
when
I studied computer science too. It was so much theory. And I think what was interesting that I picked up on is when you're tinkering, you're building stuff, it's like what most people don't realize now is like, there was no ChatGPT, there was no Google. You couldn't Google how to write a batch script to install an OS, and like you're tinkering. It's like you're learning stuff or magazines. Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember the
My father used to drop me off at Barnes and Noble.
I used to buy just old computers all the time and just like figure out how to get them to run and how to make them. It was just like a tinkering thing. It was like, I would say that was a fun time to start, because it was like everyone was like a pirate and nobody knew what the hell they were doing, and there was no books, there was no authority. It was just like we're just playing around.
That energy was great.
Yeah.
So now you make it to senior year, right? And you strike me as someone who sort of is a puzzle thinker and a pattern guy. Why drop out? What was the impetus that was
I mean, like dropout, it sounds like, I always say like dropout sounds like too fancy, because that's like dropout means like, oh, I made a decision, I'm going to stop, whatever. I was working full time. It was more like apathy. I did like stop going. I kept going to the lab, and then all of a sudden there was like there used to be these things called news groups, which they would be like Reddit, but they were like in a terminal, and they would like, it was tiny, and I connected with someone on there that was looking for someone to help them basically write code for their startup that they were starting in, and they were based in Soho at the time. And so like I connected with this guy, his name was Sean. And I went down, I interviewed, for an interview, and they were like, do you know how to code? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you're hired. Because that was the internet. No one knew like what we were building.
Was that Buyer's Own, or was that before Buyer's Own?
That was before. There was this thing called, at the time it was called Concrete Media. There was like three founders. And Concrete Media was like, it turned into what was like an agency back then. And all these agencies were starting at the same time. So across the street from us was like, Razorfish was just starting, agency was just starting, all these things that you would have heard of later as these big agencies, like they were just across the street. We would just hang out with all these guys, and so we just started. We started building websites for other people, but the idea for Concrete to pay the bills, the idea for it was always like we were going to build our own. We called them. It was so dumb, right? We called them like community media properties on the web, but like they were just like social networks, right? But that term didn't exist. So we created this thing. We created two things. One of them was called Girls On Network, and that was like basically today would be like Sugar or one of these things that was like a network of blogs aimed at women or whatever. But that wasn't a term that we sold that to Oxygen Media. And we started another thing called Bolt, BOLT.com. And that was, there's been many Bolts after that, but Bolt.com was basically aimed at teens. And it was the first major, like, was the biggest, like social network for teens, on the internet. And so like we had, it was a crazy thing because it was like Facebook before Facebook. It was like, I mean, like this was like the late 90s, And
at the time, you're coding, you're building these things. That was your role.
Built 100%. I mean, this was a time when, and back then we had like, when I look back, a friend of mine who had a screenshot of like of our app, sent it to me a few years ago. And I was like, I don't even know how they sent me a screenshot. How did we take
Wayback Machine?
Yeah, I don't know. There was no screenshots. I was like, I don't know. So they sent me the screenshot and I was like, oh my God, I forgot we built email. We built, so you could have your own like app Bolt address.
Sure.
We had instant messenger that we built ourselves. We had, groups and forums and all this kind of stuff that we built ourselves. We had, we built something called Bolt Store. I mean, this was like the late 90s. And Bolt Store was basically like, if you look at companies like Threadless and all that kind of stuff, was basically that. And it was like teens. We had millions of teens. The average time that these teens would spend on the website was 56 minutes. And that was when they were using dial-up modems.
So you're like, you're grepping log files.
Yeah.
Right?
And then what they would do is they would mail us art that they would make. And then we would pick one. And then we'd have them screen printed. We have these interns run down Soho, screen print them, ship them, box them, and then it was like our e-commerce thing that we were doing. That
so doing it was DTC before that was ago. Before e-commerce was a thing.
Yeah, there was no term. There wasn't even a term yet. I mean, this was like 98.
We're gonna definitely come back to that because you've invented a couple of terms in your career.
Yeah, 98. Yeah, so a long time ago, man. So anyway, that was Bolt, and then I left Bolt. When we were like growing like crazy, we were filed to go public, which they never did because everything crashed in 2000. But like I left and I moved to Boston at that point.
So now one thing that I think would be a little hard to follow for the guest is what was that spark moment for you when you're like, I'm no longer going to be a college student or an employee. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Because ultimately what I'm hearing and the research that we've done is you've always been building things your whole career, your whole life, whether it's in a warehouse or on the internet. So what was that turning point moment for you where you're like, I'm in this thing, this Razorfish thing's popping up, this agency thing's popping up, this e-com thing's popping up, like I'm going in. Like, talk us through that moment.
I think, like I went to go talk to those guys who were starting this thing, founding this thing that ended up being 3 companies. But like, for me, it's always been the same thing. I've only learned this looking back now is like, all I needed was a model. So like I'm a human's model by nature, but like I really need a model. So I needed like to go and see these 3 people starting this business, just 3 of them. We were on Spring and Broadway, and which sounds great, but it was like, coolish like loft, but it was like, it meant like there was no air conditioning and, like whatever. It was crazy. So, yeah. Like that kind of stuff. So we were in there and all I needed that model. I was like, oh, they're starting a business. And once I like was there and looking at them, I was like, I can do this. It was kind of one of those things. Like I learned by like even growing up, it'd be like someone show me something and then I'd see them doing it. I'd be like, I could do that too.
So
kinesthetic, but like I didn't even have like the imagination to be like, oh, I'm going to start a business because I didn't know where to start. I was obsessed with businesses even at an early age, but I would read magazines and they would be like about starting a business, but all of those things were franchises, how to start a dry cleaner, how to buy a Taco Bell, how to do that. I was like, I'm not going to buy one. I don't know how to do that. So like there were no models, there were no books, there was no like cult of being an entrepreneur. Like I always say, like I didn't use the word entrepreneur until like 10 years ago. I hated that term because growing up entrepreneur meant like you're a fucking loser. Like you can't get
I hate
a job.
that term now because everybody's just full of shit on the internet. It's like, you got this account, I'm an entrepreneur, so no, you're not.
Yeah. So like no one would use that. Like if you went to told someone you're an entrepreneur, like back then they'd be like, what?
Yeah, what does that mean?
What is that?
So you came up, obviously, in a lot of ways, you're a visionary product mind, and I want to definitely unpack that because just the nerd in me, and I know the audience is going to want that too. You came up as the engineer, and in most roles, really CTO type of mindset, right? What was that turning point moment, looking back at Buyer Zone as a CTO, where in a lot of companies, typically the CTO is the builder. Now it's changing again in modern, but you really turned a hot corner and went into product hard. And we're going to talk about that, but unpack that for this, because I know we've got audiences of all walks and talks, and I think a lot of people now are doing more. They're expanding more horizontally. So you're a CTO, you're a builder, you're writing all this code, you're building all these things. What's that turning point moment for you where you're like, okay, I got this model now, I want to be an entrepreneur. Before we had the name for it. I'm a builder, I'm CTO. Now, when does the product mind start kicking in for you?
Yeah, I think, it's like for me, the progression was like, one, I was just a builder. Just like I liked making things. And like back at Bolt in that era, it was like I did everything. Like I ordered the hardware. I built the hardware. I built the servers. I made my own Ethernet cable because you can buy Ethernet cable. And I had to clamp it and do all this stuff. I took the machines from the rack, and like we had a co-location center in Jersey City, and like drove them over there, installed them, did the whole thing, did all the operations, wrote 100% of the code, hired all the people. Like I did like all of it, did the front end, did all that stuff. That's what I liked. I liked doing everything. And so, but back then there was no specialization. It wasn't like I'm in product, I'm this designer, I'm this whatever. It was just like, just do anything, just like make it. And so like, I love that part of it. And then after, when I first started my first company, Compete, like, I was CTO of that company, but that was really because back then, like there was this kind of idea that, if you're young founder, whatever, young founders were not the CEO of a company, right? There was this idea that you would bring in professional managers, and they would be like someone with gray hair, and they'd be the CEO, and then the founders would be CTOs and whatever. It was really like later on, like basically like Zuckerberg era and all that kind of stuff, that like founders were like, no, the founder should be the CEO, but that was kind of rare back then. And so like I fell into the CTO role, but for me, CTO meant, running product and CTO. There was no really delineation, but I liked making, that was my obsession, just make stuff and, be closer to customers. But when I, to answer another question, when I moved to Boston, I joined this company called Buyer Zone. I was at this company called Lycos, which was a search engine for a little while. And then I was like, I talked to some guys, they were trying to recruit me to go to be CTO of this company called Buyer Zone. So I meet with one of the investors. They're like, no, I get the job, I start, and then one day they're like, oh, this guy who's one of the VCs that invested in this company wants to meet with you. I was like, okay. He happened to be in the building next door. So I go in the building, I go up this elevator, it's the top floor. I've never met this person before. Top floor, with this crazy, I go into this office, the guy has like views forever, just a giant desk.
Kind of like where you're sitting right now.
Yeah. Giant desk. And there's no chair over there. It was over there, and he's sitting there.
It's like a sci-fi movie.
It's like it was like a movie. It was the most surreal. It's locked in my mind, right? Because I walk in, and he's like, whatever, he says hi, and he's just like, but he's like a real ass.
Yeah, pretentious.
Really pretentious, and he's just like, his first words to me like, why should I let you be CTO of my company?
What's going through your mind at that moment?
And I was like, what? He's like, did you go to MIT? Because he's a big MIT guy. And I was like, and then I just snapped, and I was like, no. I said, I didn't go to MIT. People that go to MIT work for me. I don't work for them. And he was like, he just like, shut up. And New York City. Yeah. I was like, what? And then, but that I love that moment because like, that was one, I've had like several of them. That was the moment that I was like, the fire was like on. Because I was like, never thought I was competitive growing up, but like, that was like the moment of like, oh, someone told me I can't do something. Yeah. I'm going to do it.
I want to talk about
like now, sort of.
No, please.
But now when later on, like starting more businesses, I'm like, please, someone tell me that I can't do it. Please. Like I want it.
I actually look for, we talk about this a lot, and I've said it on a lot of recordings where I actually search for the you can't do it, or
it's always been done this way.
It's always been done this way. Look for those keywords. When someone says, oh, but it's always been done that way, I'm like,
yeah,
there's a better way.
Yeah,
I know it, I know it, especially like when you're around old timers. And I mean, we've now, Pete and I have crossed the chasm from marketing agency to technologies to some angel investing. We've done a real estate development, $25 million real estate development. They're like, have you ever done real estate before? I was like, well, we bought a 2-family house in West Haven. I was like, we rented it to somebody. I was like, but no, definitely not any like development. And they're like, how are you going to do it? But this is the way it's done. And I was like, all right, we're going to show you a different way. And now we have the stories, and they're like, holy shit, how did you figure those things out? And I was like, because you guys said it.
And those are the stories that give me so much energy.
Oh, I love
those stories.
Yeah.
Likewise.
It's definitely the good stuff.
So you said,
just really quick,
please.
I want to go back before I know you want to move the conversation along, but you talked about like you did all of this stuff. You ran the cables, you crimped them, you ran the co-location in Jersey City and all that stuff. Nowadays, everybody wants to hire. Kiki and I actually had this conversation the other day where he's like, everybody does one thing, and they don't do it efficiently, and it's like a drag. And now you're seeing like Elon come in and axe half a staff, and all of a sudden everybody's like, holy shit, maybe you can do this with half the thing. Do you think it's going to go back that way? Do you think like we need to make a reversal to like people doing, like working hard and being makers and doers and enough of this like big company, gigantic scale bullshit?
I'm praying. Yeah. I hope so, because I think like
it says a lot. I mean, you've accomplished a lot, so it's important to hear that.
I hope I pray for that, because I think all those layers, and if you like read a lot, even in our world of software, you read a lot of history. Like in software, like every time that's happened, like, and this was one of the biggest problems at Microsoft back in the day before Satya came in and did everything that they're doing, but like, was that there was so many layers, so many levels of specialization that it became too inefficient to have communication. That communication will break down, right? Obviously, IBM had did this before, but like you grow big enough, and all of a sudden, like half the company is basically trying to figure out how to efficiently communicate with the other half, right? And the problem with that is, well, one, there's a whole bunch of waste, but two, like now everything is done through proxy. Everything is too separated from the customer. And this is one of the things that, if you read a lot of like Bezos and the early days of Amazon, they were resisting, was because they had looked at Microsoft, which was in Seattle as well, and saw what was happening there. Was like, no, we need to keep force teams to be small, force people to do more things, and force people to be closer to the customer. I think like that's when stuff happens.
And then if the technology world shrinks a little bit, more people can go back to like jobs with dignity, like seamstress and plumbers and HVAC, because there's none of those anymore.
There's none.
Zero. Everybody just wants to be in this tech world.
Totally.
And most of them don't fit in, and most of them don't
do a
job, and then they're not happy.
Yeah.
Talk about burnout and all the bullshit.
I agree.
And a lot of people would just like to make something and be done with it.
Tell my Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is great. I'm loving this whole conversation.
Totally. I mean, like, they want to be in technology. I say the same thing about technology. I say the same thing about college. It's like most people don't need to go to college. Like, I don't know. This is like a false idea that we have.
Yeah.
Right? Like
we've done a lot of damage in the last few years. I mean, since I started in SEO in 2002, and I was fascinated by it, and I just seen this like rise and crash. And this one, I'm like, hopefully there's a lot of correction that needs to get done. And hopefully
a lot.
I'm hoping that things like ChatGPT are opening the door, everybody's eyes, and saying, you know what, I'm just going to get replaced. Maybe I should do something that's not going to get replaced, like be a plumber, like be an electrician, like go back to the trades, that kind of stuff. It's like,
I hope so.
It really needs to be some change.
Speaking of change, so something that I think the audience would get a lot of value from you, hearing from you, I've listened to talks that you've done on this, and I want the audience to hear it, is not a lot of people in CTO positions when you were a CTO look like you. And in a lot of ways, the New York City mindset, and also just being a person of color, right? Coming in, most people in tech look like me, right? And we know that needs to change, no question. So talk to me and talk to the audience a little bit about how, when you're in those roles and there weren't a lot of people that look like you, again, that was your world from day one, right? Where you grew up. But what are some advice that you can give to people, that outsider mindset that you talk a lot about? You're like, I don't want to be an insider. Talk to the audience about that, because I think that you said something earlier which really struck a chord with me, which is you needed a model. And what I hear is when you say models, I hear representation. If I can see it, if I can see it, I can grasp it, I can grok it, I can make it.
Exposure.
So break that down for the audience and people that might be, you know, breaking into a world that doesn't look like them, whether it's, you know, women or people of color or just other groups.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, as you said, you know, my upbringing and growing up where I did kind of helped me a little bit with that. But, you know, when I got into technology I would say like for the first decade at least, like I never worked with anyone that looked like me. Like, but it wasn't like I wasn't like, oh, there aren't enough. I was like, there was, you know, zero. Like, you know, I never saw another Hispanic person. I never saw another brown person. Never saw a black person. Never saw like I knew like this was so long ago, right? That this is like LinkedIn. There was no LinkedIn. There was no social anything. Like, so like I knew in my mind they must exist, but I'm in freaking New York City and I don't even see them.
You can't see people on IRC and use it.
Yeah. Just exactly.
There's no avatars.
Yeah, there's no avatars back then. So I knew in my mind they must exist, but I was like, I never saw one, you know. And it was like until I met my co-founder, my business partner, Elias. This was in Boston, but this was like many years later when I met him and we started working together. I was like, there's another one because he's Nicaraguan. He was literally the first that I saw with my eyes. I was like,
you're like, oh, you exist.
There's one.
This little fella.
Yeah, this one thing. Yeah, I was like, there's one. And I was like, what? So it was amazing. So, you know, like, I think there's so much that, and this is a big topic area for he and I, and a lot of stuff, we spend a lot of time here and money, but like, you know, I think we've come a long way. I think it's easy to get, you know, and I've been on both sides, easy to get like wound up of like, you know, there's not enough of XYZ, and it's like, and you know, for us, it means like, it's not a problem that you can solve immediately. Like we've been focused mainly on like, how do we get people who are, you know, in different groups when they're in high school, maybe even before, but we've like focused on high school to become interested in these topics of, you know, whether it's computer science or sales or marketing or whatever, to try to help them, because it's basically giving them a model to be like, oh, there's someone like me, I could do that too, and then they can do that. And that's long term the only way to really like solve some of these issues. But you know, I was lucky growing up the way that I did, that I was like able to have a shield around me and ignore it, and I never thought about it like for one day. You're right. Like
we started a nonprofit tech school. Originally had bought a franchise out of Silicon Valley that was just starting up, that was funded by the founder of LinkedIn and a few people. Ultimately pivoting out of it, we went for adult education, and we were trying to recruit kids from high school to say, listen, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go right to technology. I'm going to learn how to code, treat this like a language, and so on and so forth. And we learned a lot. The biggest thing was that they don't have any exposure, right? You've got generational gaps, you know, huge generational gaps of no exposure. So similar to your family saying, your mom saying be an accountant, my father said there's only two jobs in the world, doctors and lawyers. And I was like, both of those sound like they're going to suck. And it just, you didn't have that, like, oh, what is computer science? What is an engineer? What's an electrical engineer? I was begging the colleges, the high schools in the area. We're in New Haven, so it's Yale and lots of poverty. Yeah. So I said to the superintendent of the Board of Education, I said, let me go and do presentations to every school, to every student. Yeah. And they said, and I said, no, I'll get them, I will get interest in technology. Because I believe that I could reach them, right? I have, you know.
Remember that video we made?
Yeah, but I grew up in an urban environment. I'm the son of hip hop music, right? Like all of that stuff. Plus, I'm Hispanic, and and so on and so forth. I dress like them. They would never let me do it. They said, "Oh no, we'll cherry pick students that are going to be the right ones." And I hated that strategy, because if I was in that high school at the time, I would not have gotten picked, because I wasn't engaged, and I was outside doing stupid shit, and I wouldn't have known. So I would have never gotten the exposure. So it really pissed me off. So then they'd bring 15, 20 kids in, and I'd get them with one thing every single time.
What's that?
I'd pull out GOAT, the app. Yeah. You know the sneaker app?
Yeah, of course.
Do you remember when they first came out with the AR functionality?
Yeah.
Where you could put the sneaker on your shoe? And I'd say to them, how many of you have seen the Dior Jordans that are coming out that are $10,000, and you see all the kids light up because it's relevant to them. Yeah. And I'd say, check this out. And I'd open up the app and I'd put it on their feed. I'd like, look. And they'd be like, wow. I'm like, that's technology. That's computer science. And I said, guess what? I was like, the guy that made that app doesn't look like you. Yeah. I was like, but he's using your culture and the things that you made popular. Yeah. I said, and then all of a sudden, by the end of it, I would get 75% buy-in to take a look at technology.
That's crazy.
And you just need that little moment. It's so special if you can get it. I just couldn't reach it. We wound up pivoting away from adult education, and now we only focus on high schools. Okay. I stepped down as the chairman after 5 years. It was just a drag-out fight to raise capital and all that stuff. And we do juniors and seniors now in 5 different cities in Connecticut. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm like, all they need is exposure. I thought maybe we could write letters to the home, educate the parents, teach the parents a little bit, but they're not there.
No,
they got
it's so wild. I would think now, I would have that same experience when we would do different groups of kids all over the place. And I was like, the thing that would blow me away was that I would think now, because of social media and YouTube, all this kind of crap, that they would know that they could do this.
How was this made?
Yeah. No. And that people like them could do this thing because they see it all the time. And every time we would have kids after coming up to me, thank you. I never saw anyone like me that looked like me do this. It's crazy. Can you do this? And I was like, wow. I would think oh yeah, now because it's all out there, but it's not. They need to see it face to face.
Or you got to do like China supposedly does in TikTok, which is they force the algorithms to teach.
They teach you.
Versus what they do to us with bullshit.
Yeah.
They give do this fucking dance, stupid shit.
Yeah. I know, but did they teach?
Speaking of,
really right and true.
Speaking of interesting tech around insights and all those things, Compete was an interesting journey for you with a nice story. So what inspired that concept? Yeah. One, and just sort of take us through kind of the cliff notes of that, because it was a relatively fast exit. And it seems like if there's one thing,
it didn't seem like it. It seems so long, man.
So take us through what first off, tell the audience what was Compete, and
Compete. A lot of people would know Compete, especially in the SEO world, because the Compete that people knew was you go to a website and you could put in any websites that you were thinking about, and we would tell you how big one was compared to the other and where they were getting traffic from and what keywords were popular for it, and we'll give you this quantitative data on these websites so that you can rank them and see how you would stack up against your competition, right? And so that was how the name came.
I apologize for all the fake logins, because I used to always have to create a new trial, because back then we were broke.
Really?
And so I pretty much wrote a script to create fake logins. I apologize to the tech team over there.
We had account Compete, and then we had Quantcast. Quantcast used to have it on the front of the page too.
But listen, when we could afford it, it was one of the first. We
used it as a business development tool. So
oh my God!
Have you seen your Compete? They'd be like, no, what is that?
Let me show you how bad you're doing, and we can fix it.
And then it looked at the data's just as bad on Quantcast. We show them both.
Both. That's funny. So Compete came about because I had moved to Boston. I was at Buyer Zone, and I met these guys. At the time, there was this thing called, they still exist. It was called Idea Lab, which was an incubator. And Idea Lab was an incubator that started in Pasadena, California. And at this time, they were raising this big round, which was massive back then. It was $1 billion, and they were expanding. And all of a sudden, they were going to have Idea Lab Boston, Silicon Valley, London, blah blah blah, New York, all these different offices. And I met some guys who were about to start the Idea Lab Boston office. And they were like, oh, you should come here and be maybe incubate a company, do something. And at the time, I met this guy named Reed Cundiff, who was also there, and he had come from a research background, so traditional research background, Yankee group. And so we got to talking about working together, and then we decided to start something. And we basically had a visit over to Pasadena, and we met Bill Gross, who's the founder of Idea Lab, and he had this internal tool that was based on some of the data from an ISP, which was, they owned this thing called Net Zero back then, which was an ISP, and it had gone public, but he had some data that he would use from aggregated data from Net Zero, and basically he was using it. It was really janky, really ghetto, but
the crystal reports type thing.
Yeah, but he would use this homegrown thing to basically try to guess new categories to create companies in, because they were spawning companies in all sorts of categories, right? And so we saw that, and we were like, we're going to productize that. We're going to make that a product. And so the original idea for Compete was the Compete that you guys both use, but that didn't come until like 7 years later. Because we started with that. We founded the company in November of 2000. That was right after the dot-com bubble crashed. So it was really bad. Luckily, we were able to raise, it was a weird story, but I was able to raise $6 million from Charles River Ventures. So they did our Series A. But we were the only people that we could find at the time that had raised money in Boston. Like even in Idea Lab had all these companies trying to raise money across all of their locations. At that time, we were the only ones to raise money, right? That was a whole weird story of why we raised money. It was a funny story, but we raised this money. So then
what was different? Like, what was your sort of like, again?
Why was I able to raise money?
Yeah.
Very relevant to today, today, because a lot of people are trying to raise money and the wells are dry.
Yeah. I think, it's all about like these like random connections and like your reputation, right? And so when I was at Lycos, this guy, Mitch, had worked on my team. We were in the labs team. So we were creating new products within Lycos. And I kept in touch with Mitch after I left. And Mitch at the time, he was like super, like he was the like a head of product type person. What I didn't know was the VP of engineering at the time, super great guy, recommended Mitch to CRV, to this one partner. And they're like, you should hire this guy no matter what, right? Like get him into one of your companies to be VP of product, whatever. This guy, Ted Dintersmith, who was a partner at CRV, he's retired now, who was like a legendary investor at the time. He basically had, I didn't know any of this. He had offered Mitch, he had got Mitch to meet him and said, you could be VP of product at any of my companies. And Mitch had told him, I don't know, I'm waiting. He's like, a friend of mine is thinking about starting a company. I'm going to wait to see what he does. I really want to work with him. And he was like, who's this guy? And he had said my name. I didn't know any of this. I walk into this meeting blind. Mitch never told me. The guy never told me. I walk into pitch this meeting. We're doing this pitch. And the guy's like somewhat paying attention. Ted's a good, dear friend and mentor now, but like somewhat paying attention. Then all of a sudden he like, I see him snap. And he's like, I know who you are. And I was like,
yeah, go check.
Oh my God. I was like, what's going on? He's like, I know who you are. And he's like, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, Mitch, you're that Mitch guy. And I'm like, at first I'm like, what is he? Who? What Mitch? Because I hadn't talked to Mitch in a while. I was like, what? He's like, Mitch. And then he said his last name. And I was like, oh yeah, I know Mitch. He's like, then he told me the story. Mitch said he wouldn't work for me, that he wants to work for you. And then he's like, and that was the end of the meeting. And then we left. And then he gave me a $6 million check right after that. Why? Because the guy that he wanted to hire, that someone he trusted said, you must hire this guy, said no to him and said, I want to work for this guy.
What's the famous phrase?
So crazy.
When you ask for advice, you get money. When you ask for money, you get advice?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, when we started Drift, fast forward a million years, when we started Drift, we raised a bunch of money and we did that early. Obviously, we had worked with all these people for a long time, but we did that by saying, like, we don't want to raise any money. I don't need money.
Do you like raising money? Because I actually do.
Some parts of yeah. It doesn't bother me. It bothers a lot of people to do.
Yeah. David's a masochist. You should see his tattoo. We'll show you off.
Yeah. Offline. Yeah. So, like, I think, like, some people, like, it bothers them to do it. Doesn't bother me to do it. But, like,
I like the game.
Yeah. It is
I like the game. I had 2 pitches. I had 3 pitches yesterday.
Oh, really?
Raising capital right now. And I had 3 pitches yesterday. 2 of them with billionaires.
Yeah.
And my partner, he's like, there's 3 guys that you have to impress. If you do this, then I'll write a big check and then I'll open up my whole network. He's very well off. And I said, okay. And I waited fucking months for him to get these meetings. And finally, I got to a point, I was just like, listen, I was like, if you don't get these meetings, I was like, I want to redo the operating agreement. I was like, I want you off.
Yeah.
And he was like shocked by it. And then he got the meetings, and the first one, I'll tell the story quickly just because it was yesterday, it's fresh. We were talking about this 3 or 4 minutes in, I had a big win. There was 2 guys on the call, and the first guy he was like very wealthy, very successful, and he went right after me, like first slide. I disagree with you. And then I jousted a little bit, and then he passed it to his CEO, which was his guy who was really the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned around and agreed with me, and I was like,
boom.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I just fucking owned the rest of the pitch. My whole team was like, that was fucking awesome.
That's awesome.
I just love that. It's like this, it's this momentum. Yeah. There's just a momentum to it. There's a rhythm. I feel like there's an energy to it. I mean, you're not going to win.
They're legal street fights.
Yeah, legal street.
Yeah, I mean, you don't win them all, but like everybody that tells me like, oh, I hate raising capital. If you don't, that's because you don't know how. You don't have a good story. You talk about all
and you don't
have a good story.
You have a good story.
And you're not passionate. I don't think your passion's going to show through that you really fucking love what you do, right? We talked about it on the walk here. We walked from the 6 train instead of taking an Uber. We'll get some exercise. I like getting my steps in. And we're talking about horse or jockey, and I was like, we've made some mistakes, but we bet on the horse, and now it's like jockey.
So with jockey,
yeah, and you know how, and when you know how to show up as a jockey,
yes,
and do the right thing, people see it.
Yeah. I'm very, very specific. I was texting yesterday with a guy who used to work at one of my companies, and he's got a startup that he wants to raise money for. He's in YC now, and he was telling me like, I'm meeting this, and that. All of a sudden, I was like, stop doing everything you're doing. Don't do any of that. This is a very specific thing that you need to do, because I find that entrepreneurs always make the same mistake, which is like, like raising money is a process. It's a sales process. It's a controlled process. And what most entrepreneurs like him, he's a first-time entrepreneur, and make the same classic mistake is like, they'll talk to anybody that wants to talk to them. They'll be there at their whim. They'll be like, oh, show up here, talk to me here, come back another day, do another thing. It's like crazy. And what I learned after years of doing it, and then being on the other side, both, investing, but also being like in these firms, like venture firms, is that it's just, I always call it like raising money is like dating dynamics, right? It's like, it's a dating game. And what I mean by that is that you want to be, when an investor, you want to be chased. So you want to create everything to be chased, right? You want, when the investor or set of investors go after you, you want to be like the new, hot, coveted, like untouchable, like kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like you need to do as much as possible to create that. And so I would say, yeah, it's a scarcity play, right? So like you have to, if this guy's in YC and people are reaching out, hey, XYZ, you want to chat? You want to have a coffee? The answer is no. Always no.
Hot girl.
No. Hot girl.
I tell people hot girl works. It's the best sales move ever.
Yeah, no.
Sorry. Not for
I'm
you.
busy. I'm heads down working on this product. And first thing is, most of those people are never here no.
Yeah.
So they're like,
FOMO kicks on.
What's going on here? And then it's like, and then I said, then you have to be really focused on like, okay, you can't just talk to random people. Who are the people? You have to do the work. Go do the work and figure out who are the firms, who are the specific partners you want to go after. Create your hit list of ideal to whatever, and then figure out like, okay, how can I get to this person, that person, this person? And I always do like, in sales, old school, we would call like surround the account. Who do I know? I'm not going to go to, Janet. I'm going to go to like the 5 people that I figured out that Janet knows, because she's invested in their companies. She knows them. She works with them, whatever. I'm going to get to those people.
Classic ABM. Right?
Yeah. ABM. I'm going to hit those people up. I'm going to get those people. So then create like a whisper campaign. So that by the time I come to Janet, I'm warm. I'm basically replicating the experience I had with Ted in the beginning. By the time I walk in, they're like, I know who this guy is.
What I love about
Janet,
that, I'm so glad that you said it, because I've been saying, he's been saying it to different teams, clients, founders that we invest in. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. So many people want to send 100 like blind emails out, and it's a waste of time, and it's just it's empty calories. So I can get off on a tangent on that one, so I'm not going to do that, but I want to take us back.
I promise, because this is pure coincidence, but my favorite mentor was a guy by the name of Tony Lee. We had him as a mentor.
Another Lee.
Yeah. It's creepy.
And he was the CEO of WeShop, which we're going to talk about.
Wow.
And
That's funny.
He was also the CEO of the biggest competitor, the GSI Commerce.
Yeah.
Sold for $80 million when Ruben would go on to make all that money. But Tony Lee said he five-time guy, had 4 exits, and he had taught us a strategy, which was you make a list of who you want to raise money from, and you number them from your number 1 priority down. And he said, and then you go and you start at the bottom of the list.
Flip the list.
He said, so then every single
so that every single person gives you, because you go there and you start getting all that advice and
get some reps.
Yeah, and
well, it's a great heuristic if you think.
Yeah,
and your pitch deck and your pitch is really an organism. It's alive, right? It's got to evolve. So you're evolving it as you're getting to the top of the list, and
that's great advice.
Get to the guys that you really want the money from. They're going to be the best people on your cap table. You're polished, and all the guys that you really didn't want, all the assholes, you scrubbed them all out, and you've got all the bullshit. Because there's guys that just attack. They just they like that fight.
Yeah,
I had one of those as well recently, and then you're just like, great, that was awesome, good reps. I feel like that was a good spar session. I'm ready for the real big fight now. And
that's awesome. That's great advice. I've never heard someone say flip the list.
That was one. He had a couple good ones, and then the second thing was more of a pace yourself, which he said, all deals take 6 months and deals never happen.
Yeah.
And that
for sure
framed everything, especially for he and I, because we were in our 20s when we started our agency, and we were like, stop being a commercial. You got to be optimistic and trying to get done in a week. We're gonna raise this money in a week. And he was such a, and it was realized now,
take 6 months.
Or now every deal, even if you got all your shit circled, you do it in the first 3 weeks, it still takes 6 months to get through the legal and the due diligence and all this stuff. All deals take 6 months, and deals never happen.
Oh my God, he's good.
I will show this to you after we wrap, just so you don't think I'm full of shit, because it's going to sound crazy. I teach a course on brand strategy. One of the things I teach founders is don't bring me slides, bring me stories.
Yeah.
Right? And I talk about the shift.
Yeah.
Which I stole from you. But,
yeah.
And there's literally a slide in my course that I teach with your face on it.
Get out of here.
Pretty out. You can see the DM the files. No bullshit.
It might be this David's face.
No, definitely not. But I can see the distant cousins.
That could be all three of our faces.
There you go. So compete. So you have this incredible funding story. And again, 7-year journey to exit? About that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
8, maybe 7, 8.
7, 8, I think. So you said it felt long.
Felt long because we started in a recession, which was .com. Then it was 9/11. So then it was like fucking more shit for like 2 years. And then we started to go. We sold the company basically at the best time, because we were just about to come into the 2008 recession. Right. So we sold the 2000. So it was like recession. It was like nonstop. So it was good. It felt long because we had to go through, in the beginning, 2 series of layoffs, which were like the hardest thing for me.
I want to unpack that, because a lot of companies right now are having to face layoffs.
Yeah.
You have been revered in a lot of ways because as a compassionate, empathetic leader, you can Google your name and lots of things come up. You know a thing or two about those things. Right?
Oh my God.
So some advice you have to give when people have to do the hard thing about hard things? I'm sure we've all read that book. What is the best way to approach a layoff when you absolutely have to do a layoff? I know you've been through this before.
Yeah, many times. Unfortunately, I mean, like the ones that I did in 2001, 2, like at Compete, 2001 and 2. I mean, those were like scarred me. Like I'm still scarred from that. And I think in some ways they may have like scarred me too much for later companies of like capping like potential like upside. Maybe I could have taken them further. Maybe I could have made them bigger, but I was always like a little bit hesitant, a little bit probably in some people's minds too cheap, to whatever, because I had gone through that, because I was like 20, I don't know, early 20s, effectively running this company and laying off people who were like, had kids. They seemed like they were like these grown up, like old people, like, and it was like in a time, it's one thing, like, we have layoffs now, and it's like, we've had layoffs throughout these different recessions, but like back then it was like, because of that bubble and because of 9/11, things really stopped in a way that we haven't seen before, except for maybe like a little bit in the COVID era in the beginning, like stopped. Like there was like nothing. And it was like, we were laying off these people, and I was thinking like, they're not going to get a job for at least a year. And almost all of them didn't get a job for a year and a half, maybe longer. Can you imagine that? Like now, I mean, like we all know people that have been laid off. I mean, luckily things are not great, but there are jobs to be had. Back then it was frozen. And so like, these grown people, they were like in tears and whatever. So like, I still like, that's still a scar. I mean, when you have to go through this, I don't think there's any easy answer, but then to be human and just like be a real person. And I think we get too stuck in process and layers and all this kind of stuff that it really is, just be a human.
Just be a human. That's fantastic advice. So what was the ultimate moment where you realized that Compete's really humming, you really got this thing going, you nailed the product market fit, and in your mind, you're like, all right, it's time to exit this thing?
Never. Never. I never felt like we would have like complete. I mean, I'd say that's a exaggeration. I'd say in 2000, when we started Compete, we started with the idea that both of the product that both of you used, right? Like the self-service, you go online. But this was 2000, right? Like there was no one.
You had the best product-led growth strategy before that was even a name.
There was no such thing. Like we were saying, like we're going to sell software online through, you know, it was just like, we couldn't even describe it. There's no word of SaaS. And so like we would go and try to sell this stuff and be like, oh, you just have to like, you know, pay and you log online and whatever. And we would literally, they're all funny stories now. We would get thrown out of businesses. They'd be like, we go to these big, like, you know, enterprise businesses, tell them about this thing. You just log in, and they'd be like, I mean, I just remember they'd be like, I just lost my fucking 401k to Yahoo stock. What the fuck? You know, and be like all sorts of quotes like, no one's ever going to buy anything online but books. You know, like no one's going to put a credit card online. What the fuck are you talking about? Like all this stuff. So we had to pivot the company and basically bring in these consultants and sell it masqueraded as consulting, you know, like license-based deal. And then in 2006, I had the idea of like, okay, I'm going to bring it back. I created the Compete that you know. I brought that back. And then from 6 to like when we sold it, that was like the hockey stick. That was like, but that couldn't have happened before, even if we weren't in Meltdown, because the thing that I didn't know that fueled that was SEO. SEO didn't exist before that. So like it was SEO people that were like jumped on it.
How did you slow it? Did you start Lookery while you were still running?
Sort of a little bit, like, you know, like we had sold it. I was trying to get out of Compete because I didn't want to go into the acquirer, and so like I left and I started. I wasn't really trying to start a company. Lookery was like the one company that I didn't actually think I would start. Well, actually, there's a ghost stories like that too. But like, I wasn't really thinking about starting a company. I had a friend in the Bay Area, and he had just sold his company, and so we were just like, you know, messing around. And
that's where you met Elias, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Are we saying that name right or no?
It's Elias. Yeah. Elias. Everyone says it. There's like 10,000 different ways, but I say Elias. But I met Elias. That's where Elias worked for me as VP of engineering. But I met him actually right when we were going to sell Compete, and I tried to convince him to be VP of engineering of Compete so that I could leave, like as my escape hatch. He said no. I ultimately hired this guy, Eric Richards, and then he regretted it because like he then saw like, oh, he could make some money if he did that. But then, you know, later on he came back and he's like, oh, I'll work with you at Lookery because I made a mistake on that one.
So you guys have stuck together for a while since then, right?
Yeah, since 2007.
So we talk about partnerships a lot, co-founders. What are the big lessons you've learned about having that relationship with him, and like what makes it special? What have you gone through? Give us a little of the downs.
Like the down. Well, one, after the Lookery experience, because I had never had a partner, but a real partner until that business, which wasn't Elias, it was another person. I was like, I'm done with partners. I'm never having. And we were 50-50 partners in that business, and I was like, I'm never having a partner again. Why? Because I disagreed with my partner at the time, and the company I think could have done a lot better. He basically didn't want to raise money. I was going to raise this money, and he wanted to run it a certain way, and so I just left and like let him run the company. At that point, we just basically had a stalemate. You know, and that was, you know, I'd say the lesson is like, you have to know your partners before. Like, I didn't really know him. He was like someone that I kind of socially knew, and we didn't really ever have the conversation about starting a business, or like never had any of the hard conversations. It just like fell into this like project we were working on. And then so when Elias worked for me, then I started Performable. I said, you know, let's be co-founders on that. But then
just for the audience, what was Performable, the idea, the concept?
Oh yeah, Performable was the company that we started after Lookery, and Performable, basically the idea was that we were going to create a new type of, that the shift that we saw was that all of a sudden we were going from a few channels offline and, you know, SEO and a couple of channels to like all this stuff was like blowing up, right? It was like all of a sudden you had to care about like, you know, Yelp, Reddit, you know, social media, Twitter, Facebook, this, that, whatever. And now your customer interactions were like everywhere, where they weren't just like on your website and in your store or just your website, they were on all these things. And so like as a marketer, how did you have a unified picture of that? And then how could you market to someone based on something that they did over there and over here and over here, stitch that together? So it was so we were going to create this new type of marketing automation system, which we did. And at the time, I'd say the thing that was funny was that my obsession was like, we're going to create a single profile for each person and across all these things, a unified profile. And we had this app. In our app, you could like log in and see this unified profile of like, you know, here's David across all these different channels. Here's what they did and all this kind of stuff.
Digital body language is awesome. I used to love that.
Yeah. And then people would like, and including some of the people that work for me were like, oh, that's the stupidest fucking idea. Marketers don't care. Marketers do mass. They don't care about individuals. They don't want to see profiles. They don't want to see anything. I always laugh because like that unified profile is the heart of every marketing system ever since then. Like
I tripled our conversion rate with the flash sale site because of your platform.
Oh, that's crazy.
Tripled it, literally.
It's crazy.
Multivariate,
multivariate testing and split testing. We had all this stuff, and so like, and that's what we later built at HubSpot, and that's the heart of HubSpot and Drift and all this kind of stuff. But like, people kept telling me like, that's stupid, don't do it. Like, no one's gonna care. And I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, unless you have a single view of David, like, then what are you doing? How are you marketing to this person? You got to have a unified view. So we did perform. We sold that company like 18. Anyways, as a partner, we sold it 18 months later. As a partner, you know, I was like, let's co-found this thing. And, but I was like, but I'm not going to be equal partners. Like, I'm never going to be equal partners.
For the audience, because again, everybody likes to know about the receipts, right? It's like that journey was 2 years to exit $20 million to HubSpot, which again, HubSpot's a name today. But back then when you sort of stepped into there and became the troublemaker, HubSpot wasn't the HubSpot we know today. With
no. I mean, I think officially it was 18 months and 25 million. But like, just to be,
that's the receipt.
But the 25 million ended up being like worth a lot more than that because HubSpot, we ended up taking HubSpot public. I was talking about the company, but blend, but like, and then we got a lot more stock later on at HubSpot. But you know, when we went into HubSpot, HubSpot was 200-person company.
What's that like, right? So entrepreneur, building, exiting, and now you're an employee of a couple 100-person company.
Well, I was like, fuck, this is the thing I said I'd never do. Because in every other thing that I sold, I was like, I'm not going. I'm never going to go work for somebody else. And, but, you know, like the reason that the HubSpot thing happened was like our investor in Performa was like, don't do it. Didn't want us to do it. And then he had figured out he was going to do a preemptive funding round, which we didn't need. And it was mostly going to be secondary. And so he was trying to make it so that we would make as much money staying in with this business than if we were to sell it, which he did. But ultimately, I decided to sell it. But it was because I knew the board and HubSpot, and they had something that was remarkable at the time. They had this amazing sales and marketing machine that from the outside, I couldn't figure out how it worked, right? None of this was documented. There was no SaaSter. There was no, like, none of this stuff was written, and I couldn't figure out how it was working. But I could never figure out what the hell is this product.
Is this before they named the category inbound marketing?
Yes. Yeah. Our user, you know, what is now known as Inbound, which is the conference, we used to be called Hugs back then, HubSpot User Groups Summit. So it was like before Inbound, and then Inbound happened right after that. But, you know, like we went in.
So woke though.
Yeah.
Hugs.
Hugs, yeah. We, you know, I knew the board and they were like, hey, they have this amazing marketing sales machine, but we need help on product. Like you guys, we were all engineers at Performable and designers. Together we could create something big. They want to create this like enduring company, and like we want to build a public company, which at the time was like a big idea because we hadn't had one in Boston for a long time. And so like So, and we had the same kind of like, similar kind of cultures. And so we spent a lot of time with them. We're like, okay, we'll agree to like do this thing and come together. But then I was like, I don't know about working. I don't know if I want to go along. But so anyway, I agreed to do it. We go in, we figure out like that the product problem that they said was like 1,000 times worse than anyone knew or thought.
The tech was like Swiss cheese, right? When you stepped in,
it was like a thing that couldn't exist anymore, right? Because it was like, this was 2011, and it was like they sold only through what was called an assessment back then. So you'd have to go through an assessment, they'd sell you through that. And the number one question after onboarding, after someone had paid these small businesses, they were very small businesses, would pay a year up front plus onboarding fees and all this stuff, was like, can I see this software now? The whole sales process, the whole thing, they would never show any software. You know, like the person would buy, they wouldn't even know what they were buying. But they were buying the promise of get on Google. On their mind, like they're going to get on Google, right? Like they're going to get on Google. They didn't know what that meant. It was like Larry the Pool Guy. You know, it was like that size business. It was like, he didn't know what that meant. And so like, and they didn't know what it was. And so they would get on, you know, I get in there. I'm like, what is this product? Because even from the outside, being in our industry, I was like, I've never seen even a screenshot of the product. Where's the product? What is this product? So I get in, I'm like, there's no product.
FTX sounds like
FTX level. There's no product. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, panic. I'm like, holy shit. First day in, I'm like, I'm looking through it. I'm like, uh-oh. And I'm like looking, there's an engineering team that's kind of new, that's already there. And I'm like, going through the eeny, meeny, miny, mo, no one here has worked on this product. No one here knows how this product runs.
I was disappointed. You like, holy shit, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah. I'm like, nobody knows how this runs.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Who built this? Contractors in Egypt, like 5 years ago. I was like, what? Who built this? A contractor in whatever country 6 years ago? I was like, what? I was like, oh my God. So I ended up, it was insane. So we ended up, and back at that point, it was just a keyword grader and a website hoster. That's basically what they had. There was nothing else. There was no email. There was definitely no CRM. We built that all later. But like, so I went in, I ended up having to fire, sorry for the long story, but I fired everybody on that team, except for like maybe one or two people.
Why? What was the main reason? Just because they didn't know what they were doing?
They were all good, but smart. They were super smart people, you know, who, you know, sometimes, you know, like the Indians, like, you know, like the tribe gets like too tribal and like they get lost in their own ways. And like, they were so lost in their own religion of like how they wanted to build things and arguing about nonsense that
I call it code Kool-Aid or customer Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Drink the customer Kool-Aid, not the
that they weren't like, they didn't talk to customers. They didn't build anything. They didn't ship anything. They didn't do anything. They argued. They had, they were religious on Scrum. They had pokering meetings and point meetings all day long. I went to one meeting, sorry for the acronyms, but I went to one meeting. I went to one meeting and I was like, what is this meeting? This is like my second or third day. And then they're like, oh, we're going to decide. And they're like, it's this pokering meeting. And I see them arguing. I'm in this meeting for 2 hours. And I'm like, I'm just watching. And these people are arguing over like, well, this feature is worth 3 points. And no, it's worth 2 points. It's worth 1 point. It's worth 2 points. It's worth. And I was like, wow. At this point, I'm like, if I ever, so I stopped the meeting. If I ever go to another fucking meeting like this, I'm going to throw a fucking chair through the window. That's what I said. And I left that fucking meeting. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And I was like, no, there was no like, we shipped something. We talked to a customer. We saw the problem. There was nothing. They were just arguing about like, they were like in Dungeons and Dragons land.
Meeting
like,
minutia.
Yeah. I was like, what is going on here? And then I would go in each day. I mean, it was like the most, it doesn't seem real. I'd go in each day and I'd be sitting here and everyone would sit out in the open, all these engineers. And I'd be like,
who's coding?
Yeah. And I'd be like, hours are going by. And I'm like, and I'm losing my mind.
Yeah,
of
course.
Like,
I mean,
I'm like this. I'm like,
I had a meeting like that last week. I won't say with who. But
yeah. And I'm like, hours are going by and I'm looking around at what everyone's doing. I'm just sitting here watching them. And I'm like, you know what I haven't heard yet? Click, click. I haven't heard one person click. Hours. No one has typed. These are programmers. There's no typing. There's no typing. I'm looking over here. What's this guy doing? this guy.
Cue in the Kevin Hart moment. I hear no click.
Yeah. I'm looking at the guy sitting next to me, this young kid. I'm like, he's on YouTube.
Oh my God.
For hours. I'm just he's what?
Are you just thinking you just threw millions of dollars down the drain by selling for this fucking stuff?
Oh yeah. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, one, this guy has no shame. He's sitting closer than you are to me.
Yeah.
Just on YouTube. We're just watching YouTube videos all day. Just on random shit. And I'm like, then finally he takes off his headphones. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you working on? He's like, nothing.
And the founder had no idea, like nobody knew?
No, because nobody knew because like...
Well, you didn't have engineers leading the company.
No, because these guys, the leader, they didn't have an engineering background and they were like, these guys are smart. They went to MIT. They went to wherever. They say they're working on this thing. They're replatforming. They got this buzzword.
Okay, you're hired.
Yeah. Buzzword, blah, 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 blah. They said they're going to ship this thing. I'm like, they're not shipping anything. I'm like, what are you working on? This guy is like, nothing. I'm like,
wow.
I can't even imagine the balls to say that to me. And it was like, it was the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean nothing? He's like, well, I was assigned whatever, blah, 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 points for this thing, and I finished my work for the month. I was like, it's like the 4th day of the month. Wow. I'm like, what are you going to do for the rest of the month? He's like, nothing.
So they made it easy for you.
I was like,
this was like a hard layoff that hurt your heart. You were like, get the fuck out.
I was like, boom, it was like empty. It was like, oh my God, it was bad. But then by that point, I was like, oh shit. But I had my squad, like 20 something of us. And I was like, we broke it now. Now we're going to like fix this. And like, cause I felt
nice. So you had a
so then I was like
team to come in.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, we're going to split up squads. We're going to start hiring. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And nobody wanted to work in that company at that point, but we created this like really great engineering culture. We started to build stuff and we're like, we're going to start one by one. We're going to build, the first thing we built was email, newsletters and marketing automation, because that's where we had come from. Then we rebuilt the CMS. Then we rebuilt basically 100% of what is there now, except for the services thing. And then we built CRM, we built sales engagement, we built all this stuff. And we did it in like such a short, back to your point of like, it was such a small team at that point. And like, it doesn't, even like when I was at Drift in the end, I was like, looking back up, so like, it doesn't even seem real. Like, how did we build all that? We built all that
substance
stuff, like,
over size.
2 years.
Yeah.
And we were just like a freaking machine, just like every freaking day. And I was just like, and I was the, taskmaster, just like, we are going to keep going. And people will be like, no, it's too fast, whatever. It's like, we're going faster. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. I was just a pain in the ass.
I love those like, social media. I'm such a social media guy nowadays. You get these videos, these like motivational videos. Is one of that, I don't know his name. He's like a fat Italian guy, and he goes, all you need is 3 motherfuckers.
Yeah.
He's like, and you can.
Oh, Joey Diaz.
Yeah. You know what?
That's my guy. That's my guy.
That's all you need, 3 motherfuckers.
He's like, that's it. We'll kill.
You can do anything.
He's like, you kill Castro.
That's the truth, though. Like,
that's
like,
true.
We talk about it all the time. Like, we've got a lot of people, and like, there's nothing like when we would just run in a room. We would just run in a room like, let's just get it done. Like, like we would fucking move mountains, and now it's like
the people would be like, I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do.
One of the things I
Jeopardy music. Yeah. What the fuck? Why is this taking so long? Just fucking do it.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say it's impatience, right? I would say it's substance. It's substance over size. And I think when I look at the length of a meeting, and I myself, who is now just an amateur coder, because back in the day I used to be good, but now I would say like I'm just an amateur, right? But if I can code something in less time than it takes for 7 people to have a meeting, we have a fucking problem.
Total problem.
So like for me, when I look at like, do we do a lot of investing? When I go into someone's engineering team or design team or whatever, and I start asking questions, and you watch those reactions, because now they're being remote. It's very hard to see who's scrolling on YouTube. We're not Big Brother spying on people, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's an interesting thing. So I know you're not one for compliments. You strike me as someone who's very humble from the limited time I've listened or seen or spent with you. But, Brian from HubSpot, one of the co-founders, described you as a visionary product development, visionary leader, which is a pretty hard compliment to come by. So one thing I'd love to understand, especially one thing that I'd love for you to unpack is what makes a visionary product leader. Knowing that you had to hire many, you've probably had to fire some as well that don't fit that. What's a visionary product leader?
I I don't see myself as a visionary product leader, but I, you know,
hire one. So go hire one, define them.
I think, you know, for me, like the thing that those like the light bulb moment like changed like everything was like it's both from a product standpoint, but also as an entrepreneur. Like I always say, like the first half of my career, like entrepreneur, and this is one thing that worries me about a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet, like I look for is like became, you know, I would notice that I was just like them and they are too obsessed around their own idea. And you can almost hear it when you talk to them. It's just like that they want this idea, that it's about their idea. They want to bring this idea. And that's dangerous because, you know, and I did this, because you wrap your ego into this idea. And all of a sudden, like when you do that, you can't hear. You don't hear anything from customers. You don't hear anything from the market. You don't hear anything. You have like a blind obsession around like manifesting your idea. And like I always look for product people and try to be a product person and try to be an entrepreneur who's on the other end of the spectrum now, which is like, I don't give a shit about my ideas. I care about like what are shifts that are happening in the world that are causing changes to happen. What are the pains and problems that my customers are having? Can we solve something, you know, and make their lives easier or make things better or smoother or faster? That's all I care about. I don't care if it's my idea, your idea. I don't care whose idea. I don't care about ideas anymore. And so like I think ideas are almost like dangerous. I think it's like, because I think we're taught that this like movie book scenario, I think people are taught like this movie version of being an entrepreneur, creating a product, which is like, I just like was walking down the street and like I had this idea for like, you know, a Tesla, and I just like made it Tesla, and now like I own Tesla. And it's like, no, like no product, service, offering, nothing has ever been created that way. Everything has been like trial and error, failure, stumbling, accidental like discovery. Like it's just been like, it's this like painful process. And so like both as an entrepreneur and as a product leader, you have to be like ready to be like, be in the pain and be in the shit all the time and be every day, be like questioning and trying to figure it out and trying to like not only learn from your domain, but learn from all these other domains and try to figure out and use those patterns or those solutions in what you're trying to do. And that's why I think like, to me, the people that I like to read about and look up to are people who are like these people that are who look at many different, you know, things in life, you know, are curious about many different things in life and how they work, and then take those things back to like the ideas they're creating. If you read like biographies on like Dyson, you read like on Franklin, if you read on obviously Leonardo, but like all these like inventors like were obsessed with lots of different things and learning from different things and then bringing them back in to this thing. So like I like that. You
just inspired me on this idea is that I love comedy.
Me too. I'm obsessed with comedy.
Yeah. So Sebastian Maniscalco is such a masterful person of observation. Like when he talks and he brings up something like his latest one, where he's talking about like, yeah, she's got a whole Sephora on the set of, have you seen the new one?
No.
So he has a habit of finding
insights, behavioral insights.
They're the greatest ones. That they observe everything, and I feel like
truth.
You know,
story.
The same thing. New York City, you feel the streets, right? The streets talk. The streets tell you where to go, right? You can feel directionally the energy. Comedians are really good at that. I feel like that's the same sort of role. That because they always hit on like those when you're like, oh yeah, he's talking about my life right now, like 90% of what's,
and he can get the right hooks. I think I'm glad you brought that up. I once hired a comedian to teach me for a little while, which was interesting. But you know, I'm obsessed with comedy because I always say like creating a product, there's only one process. There's only one creation process, and the creation process always looks the same way. And it's like this feedback loop process of like going back and forth and like refining and trying to figure out and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And I think that when you study comedians and what they do, you see it right there, right? Like they have a very
test and learn everything.
Yeah, test and learn everything. They have the big ones, whether it's him or like Rogan or like any of these guys or Hart or like any of these or Chappelle. Like you see what they do. They have a very methodical process of how they test material. And that's what I hired this comedian to try to teach me, how they test material, how they ladder up material, how they do it for small audiences and then bigger audiences, bigger and refine, and then
the reverse list.
Yeah, and by the time it's a reverse list. By the time they've gone through this process for a certain amount of time. Now they're like, now I'm ready for the stadium tour. But they always start.
They're never allowed to bring cameras in. They don't want you to have no material. You can't film the material or nothing.
No, but they refine the process. But like creating anything looks like that. Yeah. And so when you talk to real people who have created things, or you read stories of how people have created things, it's always that same process. Yeah. Right. You read whatever the inventor is. If you see how they create things, it's like it's been this trial and error and frustrating process.
It's laboratories over boardrooms.
Yeah.
Laboratories over boardrooms.
We'll take it offline. I want to know more about the comedy thing, but I don't have a ton of time. But thank you for sharing that. I actually, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a comedian. My father said, that's bullshit. Everything was bullshit. Doctors and lawyers.
I think he still wants to be a comedian.
Yeah, why not?
I have my, the fucked up thing was my father, who recently passed away, he was funny till his last moments in the hospital. He literally had the nurses dying in the room because he had comedic timing.
Yeah.
And he had great comedic timing, and it's something that I have as well. And, you know, and it's a shame because I did want to do it. I have talked about it. So I want to know about the person that you took the lessons from. Yeah. So I want to go back to Elias.
Got
it. See, you said there's 1,000 different versions, right? I want to go back to him. We talked about partnerships. This is a big one. Because I think a lot of people seek partners because it's like if you come up with an idea and people think it has merit, you got to go find a technical co-founder.
Yeah.
Or if you're a technical co-founder and you don't have a guy like me that can do the strategy and sell it, you're fucked as well. So you said you got to get to know somebody, but like, so we've talked to different founders about their approach to getting to know somebody. If you could advise people on how you would do it today, if you met somebody fresh and you were going to start a company, or you had an idea that you wanted to, how much time would you take? What kind of things would you go through to sort of learn who that person is?
I think I would start always by, and this is the harder part, which is like knowing what you're good at and what you are really bad at. So you have to figure out and you have to be honest with yourself about what do I suck at? What gives me energy? What do I keep failing at? Even if I want to be good at it, what am I mediocre at? Right? There's the stuff that's obvious stuff you suck at. Then there's the stuff that you like doing, you're good at. But the most of it is you're just mediocre at it. You're just okay at it.
What's your zone of genius?
Yeah, exactly. What's your zone of genius? I love that. And so you have to be honest with yourself because then you're looking for a compliment of the partner. Has to be a compliment of that. For me, my partner Elias is 180 different than me, degrees different.
Yeah.
He is if I'm on this spectrum, he's over here. There's there's overlap in values, but when people meet us, they're like, oh my God, you two are the most opposite people, odd couple on the planet. Yeah. And so you need that. Yeah, the odd couple. So you need that. And so but you can't get there unless you could get lucky, but you can't really get there unless you know yourself first. And so first know yourself, first know your zone of genius, said. And then in terms of testing people, I think there's working scenarios, but for me, it's really about spending time with them, having conversations with them. And, my interview process, and this would be an interview process, always the same, which is I'm just trying to figure out what lights them up, what gives them energy, what they're excited about. And I never want it to be an interview to feel like an interview. I want to keep them off guard. I want to be their interview is we're going for a walk, or we're going here, or we're going for a ride somewhere, or jump in the car with me, let's go. You want to
keep them off balance.
Keep them off balance.
Yeah.
Because because I've interviewed thousands of people at this point, what I've noticed is a lot of people, especially the more they are towards the sales side, or is they have a script that they're going to give you, and this is what they're going to go. And all I would do in those scenarios, once I started to notice that, was I'm going to break their script. I got to get them off. And I would distract them, and I would I would start see them going on a little thing, and I'd be interrupt, break. Because I wanted to get to who is this person? Who is it? And not ask them directly about what they're interested in, but start talking about things and be just read their body language, he did before, of what got them to light up, what got them excited, what got them to lean in. No matter how introverted or quiet or shy they are, there's going to be a topic. And I think I learned this by interviewing so many engineers, endless number of engineers who wouldn't talk. I mean, if you've been in some interviews where it'd be you go in, the person would be Nothing.
They're just waiting for they're waiting for their leak coding problem or something, you know?
Not a word. Not hello.
Yeah.
Not a, no eye contact, straight down, just like. So I'd be like, okay, how am I gonna get this person? So I'd be like, hey David, I went skiing this weekend. You into skiing? Yeah. Silence. Okay, no. Okay, so I'm gonna go again. I'd just be like, I'll go again. Go this, go that. You ever go to this restaurant and go to this? I'm just like ping-ponging. My interview style is still the same. It's like the weirdest thing because I'm just ping-ponging everywhere. There's like no, in their mind, they're like, what is this guy talking? What do we just talk about random stuff? But then it'd be like, I'm basically trying to figure out, like, I just said something. We talked about, X, Y, Z. I just saw David. He just like woke up. Ping.
Yeah.
He just lit up.
Would you say, so let's say you found somebody that had like 10 out of 10 on the talent scale and like 1 out of 10 on the self-awareness scale.
No.
Run away?
Run away. Okay. Run away. I mean, that's like a famous, like, I think it's like, it's either a Buffett or Munger quote, like what he looks for in people. But he's like, basically he looks for 3 things. And he's like, the last one, he's like, if they don't have self-awareness, like, it's the most dangerous thing. Right, because like if they're smart and they're self-aware, they're smart and they're shooting that out. There's like
I stole this from Seth Godin, the writer, when he did MBA with Wes Cow. Who's now doing Maven, the online learning platform. He says, "I can't work with you until I've worked with you." So one of the things that I've always been big on is whenever I fell for I thought they were 10 out of 10, I thought they were great, I got duped. But when I actually got to work with somebody and see sort of like the way that they think and solve problems, is less about the work product and more about like just how do they approach things. This is someone that I can be in the trenches with. So I stole that from Seth, but I think that quote sounds like something that once you get through that.
Yeah, I would have all these little tests. I got in trouble one time. I got a lot of like hate one time because like the Fast Company, which used to be a magazine thing, interviewed me a long time ago and wrote this thing about like how that I had this water test. And then I got like flamed all online because of it. Because what I was doing was that, if you were doing an interview in a regular room, if I usually would be the last person coming in and they'd give them food and like you guys brought water and stuff like that. And so I always on purpose would be the last person in the room. And so I'd go in, interview over, walk out. And then I would always start to look like, what was that person's thing? Were they like, oh, would I throw away the garbage? Where does the water go? What do I do with it? Or were they like, had a giant mess of food and whatever and would just get up and leave?
The buffet test that we heard about.
And they would get up and leave. And I just started noting that. I didn't make it a thing, but I just started noticing that, like, because I was looking for conscientiousness. Like,
and you got flamed for that?
Yeah. Because people are like, oh, that's not the totality of someone and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what are you, an idiot? Like, well, you're looking for people who were like, because we wanted people who were like, everything was their job. They cared about every detail. This wasn't somebody else's job.
Does that work,
It's not somebody else's job to clean my cup. It's my job.
Does it bother you coming from where you come from, your tenacity, clearly off the radar, to see the world that we're moving into, which is very soft?
Yeah, I'm not of this world. That's what I always say. Yeah, I'm like from a different world.
It's really hard.
I'm not from this time. I'm from a different time.
Yeah.
I feel like an alien now.
Yeah. I struggle with it. I'm trying to like toughen up my kids, and I'm like not the little ones. I got a 2 and a 4 and a 14. The 14, she's in training.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is it. I'm like teaching her. She plays tennis. I'm like, I'm going to teach her the thing that I know. I said I'm not a tennis player. I said, but I was a hell of a shit talker.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you get good shit talk. I think it's 20% of the game.
Yeah. No, it worries me because like again, if you study history, it's like, I mean, what's that saying? It was like all societies start Stoic and end Epicurean, and we're like ending Epicurean, meaning like we started like Stoic, and now all of a sudden all we care about is, all the nice stuff and like having everything and being blinged out and all that kind of stuff, and like you don't care, and like every civilization has fallen that same way. Yeah. Like when it gets to that point, it feels like we're getting towards that point.
Watch the new Sebastian show.
Okay.
There's a part where you're going to be like, I know exactly what Dave's talking about now.
Okay.
I was just like.
Speaking of being flamed by your audience, I'm going to be flamed by our audience if we don't talk about drift.
Okay,
yeah. For a couple of reasons, and I know the clock is running low, and you've got a hard stop. So you're at HubSpot. You sort of with an amazing team.
What's the market cap when you left
HubSpot? Oh, I don't know. We had gone public. I don't know, 12 billion, something like that.
Wow.
I mean, it got us. I don't know what it is now.
And you started
2 billion.
What was the value when you started?
I don't know. Hundreds and 100 million. I don't know, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the things,
100 million.
one of the things that you're known for,
on your exit.
lots of zeros, folks, lots of zeros to the research.
Yeah.
So we'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry. So you declared war on forms.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when you opened and started Drift. But I'd love to hear where were you at mentally, emotionally? You know, HubSpot's now doing really, really well. You're there. You know, chief product. You know, impressive things, all that kind of stuff. What moment happened in the heart and mind of DC when you said, I needed to declare war on forms and I'm going to start Drift?
Yeah, well, I left HubSpot when we went public, and then Elias left a little bit after as well. He was VP of engineering for me there. And, my mindset was like, I don't want to start another company. I'm tired. I don't want to do another company. I was like, I was almost set. I was like, I'm not starting another company. And, but Elias, who was, hadn't done this as long as I have and was like hungrier, was like, come on, man, let's start another company. Come on, man, let's do it. He was just like in my ear, all the time, week after week, month after month, like, come on, one more. And I was like, I don't want to start another company. And so I really didn't want to start another company. I considered going into venture or doing nothing. And then, finally he started to convince me, and then I was like, look, then I created a whole bunch of rules, like, and was like, look, I'm not going to start our criteria. I'm not going to start another company unless I think it's going to be like, we can build a big company. I'm not going to start another company unless we run it exactly this way. I'm not allowed, basically all these things to be like, for him to say no, and he was like, okay, let's start it. So it was like, it has to be perfectly like this. But we have to find a big idea. We have to like find something big. And at the time, we had finished, there's nothing like leaving something and having, some time to be like, to recollect on it and thinking to myself like, well, we had built all this stuff, all this like, landing pages and email and CMS and CRMs and all this kind of stuff. But what that led to was like this proliferation at the time of everyone doing things like putting up forms, gating everything, ebooks and gating and all this kind of stuff. It was just like not the best experience. And I was thinking like, okay, what is going to be the future? That can't be the future of a website. That can't be the future of kind of like selling. And so like, I thought, if anything, we need to go all the way back to the beginning, which is like, how do we make things personal? How do we have, I always say like, if you're a salesperson, like no sales has ever happened without a conversation. You have to have a conversation. But what we were doing at the time, just as an industry, when we were starting Drift, was like trying to do anything possible to prevent someone from having a conversation. We had all these people, all these salespeople within a company that say, hey, I've never got a lead, or I only get shitty leads. And all these marketers spending all this money trying to bring people to a website, but creating all these hurdles and then never giving anyone to these salespeople. So it was like this crazy thing. So I thought like, oh, what about if we like maybe we need to kill forms. We need to kill gating. Like everything needs to be open, and that's the future because most of your prospects, customers know more than you do about the product. And we need to just figure out the most efficient way to get someone who's interested to the person within the company who can help them, i.e. the salesperson in most businesses. So that was kind of the concept. There was a whole bunch of other macro things like shifts that we saw in the world happening that was like fueling that. And so that was the beginning of Drift.
I think one thing that I want to hear from in your words is something that people always talk about is the importance of brand as a startup. You invested heavily in brand. You named and created a category, which is like what HubSpot did with creating inbound marketing. You invested a ton of those things. Talk about the importance of branding as a startup, because a lot of people are like, oh, I can do branding later. I can do branding later. I focus on all these things. You wrote a book. You did all these different things. Give us sort of like the speed notes version of that.
Sure. I'd say, where to start? Like, marketing fundamentally, I think the thing that I found that interesting was like that marketing, at least the man generation in marketing, is about finding arbitrage opportunities, right? It's about finding areas where you can get early into a market, and then you can have, a lot of effectiveness, because that means you have to have a lot of trial and error. You have to do that kind of stuff. And I found that people were like getting too hooked on like Google ads or Facebook ads or all this kind of stuff at this point. but like that it was very hard for them to break through because like the arbitrage was gone there. They were not the PPC people back in 2000, right? Early 2000s or mid 2000s or whatever. Yeah. They were not, you know, like you used to be able to like, there would be, you know, like all markets like at the beginning are hard to measure, small, but then there's an arbitrage opportunity in there because other marketers won't invest in them, because marketers like finding channels that are highly scalable, perfectly measurable. But guess what? By the time it's highly measurable, perfectly scalable, the arbitrage is mostly going out of that market, meaning like it's really expensive, right? It's hard to get a return in that market. And so I thought like, you know, looking at where we were in the world of SaaS, I thought like, and I won't go into this whole thing, but I think like every market goes through 3 phases. I thought we were in the 3rd phase. I thought like, well, we were going from a world like a back and compete, which we were talking about. There was no competitors that were SaaS, 0. Till now, you know, we were starting HubSpot. Maybe we had, you know, 5, 6 competitors, real competitors at HubSpot. We were starting Drift. In every category that I was looking at, especially in ours, there were hundreds. Some category there were thousands of SaaS competitors. In that world, when your market gets that mature, you have to do one thing, which is invest in brand, because it's the only way you can stand out. Because you have no, in the first phase, it's just like if you can build the technology, if you can get people to know about it, evangelize it, like they'll buy it because there's no other way to do this. In the second one, it's like where we did HubSpot, it was like, oh, we'll do freemium, it's a business model innovation, and we'll sell it a certain way, and then we can sell it. In the third phase, it's just too much competition that the only way for you to stand out is to build a brand, to build affinity around a group, and then to create that, you know, to create new products in that brand to keep extending your brand. And so for me, when we started Drift, the model was not any other SaaS company. I don't care about looking at other people like that. I was studying Procter & Gamble. I was studying copywriting. I was studying sales letters. I was studying all this stuff and being like, okay, how do we build brands? How do we build a global brand? And so I started to do all those kind of things. And so if I was starting a SaaS company or any company, a DTC company or any company that's in a saturated market, you have to invest in brand. It's the only thing that matters, right? Because everything else can be taken away. If a DTC brand, you usually sell or rely on someone else's platform, that can be taken away, right? You only have to study history. Is if you build on someone else's platform, it will always be taken away. Whether it's Amazon will copy your product in the current model, or back in the day, Sam Walton started a 5-a-dime store before Walmart, and he made it so successful that the landlord said, guess what, I'm not renewing your lease because you don't own this lease. I'm kicking you out, and I'm going to build my own store here. And so at 45 years old, 45 years old, he had to start over, and then that's when he started Walmart.
Earlier in this conversation, you talked about a rule that you had. You wouldn't work for a big business, you wouldn't work for anybody, etc. And you broke that rule.
Yeah.
I also heard about a rule that you made for the Drift, which was that you wouldn't sell.
Yeah, that's true.
So what changed? I know you told us before the interview started that it was influenced by our mutual friend, Austin.
Yeah.
But what happened? Why did you decide to get out of Drift?
Yeah, I did. So when we started Drift, I was dead set on I didn't want to sell another company, right? And I wanted to see if we can build our own public company. Having had the experience at HubSpot, and we were so if we go back, we had a bunch of interest we had 3 rounds of investment, CRV, General Catalyst, Sequoia, and then we were starting this 2 years ago. We're starting to get inbound interest from all these growth investors, right? And I started talking to some of them about doing a Series D, and this would be a big round. And but the thing that I kept hitting was I felt like we were getting to the point I didn't have, again, models. If we go back to models, I didn't have models for this next phase of growth, and I felt like I really needed help operationally. And I had wanted to hire a COO for a while, and I kept delaying it. And I was always like, oh, we're too small, we're too small, we're too small. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, we needed a COO 6 months ago.
Why did you need a COO? And what does a COO do in your mind? Because I hear that word a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm not a good person to ask because I've only had one experience, which is at HubSpot, we had, I worked with JD Sherman, who was COO, and it was awesome. We had the founders, with the founder. So we had Brian, who's CEO, running the business, but like really the business on a day-to-day basis was being run internally by JD. Like the cadence and all that stuff was being run by him. Brian, of course, was involved, but he was more outside and more running around. But like really the business was running inside because of JD. And I had a great experience with him. So because JD was like, he's running basically all the functions, but he was like, he was an awesome leader. He wasn't in your way. He deferred, like everyone ran their own things. He didn't get in the way. And he didn't necessarily want to be CEO, which is like what most COOs want to be. So it was pretty awesome. And so I thought like maybe I can find my own JD. What I figured out was later on was I couldn't, but that he was like a unicorn for someone to have that low ego, but have that breadth of control. And like, it was hard. So I was starting to think about that. And so we mentioned Austin. So I had known of Austin. I think I met him like once or twice before, but like, I kept getting invited to a bunch of things by this David Fialco, who's like one of the partners at General Catalyst. And at some point he invites me to go skiing. And I was like, I'm not going skiing. I don't want to go skiing. And he's like, oh, it's all these entrepreneurs. I was like, I don't want to go. And I was telling, I think I ran into Elias after that. And we were just meeting about something else. And I told him, and he's like, I'll go. Because Elias is like, we'll go. He's like wants to like go to everything. He's like the most extroverted person. He's like, can I go? And I was like, yeah, you want to go? Go. I don't care. So whatever connect, he goes with them. Turns out it's a bunch of entrepreneurs. One of those entrepreneurs is Austin. So Elias spends this weekend or week, I can't remember what it was, skiing with Austin and all these other entrepreneurs, and is telling him about, we think about raising around this, that, and Austin's like, oh, you should talk to Vista. And because Austin had sold to Vista before taking the company public. And so Elias comes back. He's like, I met this guy, Austin. We should do Vista. And I was like, Vista? I was like, private equity? I was like, I'm not talking to. I don't want to deal with private equity. And he's like, no. And so I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. We were still talking to these other people. What I didn't know was then Austin connected Elias with Monty, who's the guy at Vista who had bought his company directly. And Elias is like, then comes to me, is like, hey, tells me about it. I was like, what? We're not talking to Vista. And he's like, hey, he's just like Monty. He's like, just said he lives in Miami. He's like, if you come down to Miami. So Elias goes to Miami.
There's always trouble in Miami.
He comes out, they
business trips.
Party all night, comes back, and he's like, Monty's amazing. We should talk to Vista. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. You're at 11.
I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, what? No. I was like, no. And he's like, no, really, they actually know. And then he starts telling about, like, they've been studying our business. They know this, they blah, blah. And I was like, finally, reluctantly, I end up talking to them at some point. And I was like, oh, interesting. What was compelling to me, and I didn't want to sell, was that, I was adamant about like, hey, we want to try to build a public company. Here's what we want to try to do. And because I had seen them do with Austin, a couple other companies, they had done that. They had bought a portion of the company.
The model was there.
And then the model was there. And then they had brought it public. And I was like, oh, maybe we could do the same thing. And maybe instead of raising this growth capital, we could do this Vista deal. We could have some liquidity for like 100% of the company, like people who've been working here for forever, for every single person, past and present, and still have a chance at going and building a public company. And so we started talking more. We talked. We ended up doing that deal. It's been phenomenal and fantastic. The timing was like for the first time in my life perfect, because it was like October of 21. And then the market pretty much created like November, December after that, like funding market. And so like now everyone, all my investors and board members from back then were like, that time was insane. They're like, that would have been like anyone's valuation would be like at least half of whatever it was at that point. So it was insane. So it turned out good. And so I ended up bringing in Scott Ernst, who's someone I know for 21 years. He was my VP of sales at Compete. And so I've known him since those days, and a close friend to run the business. I moved to exec chair. And I think we're still on the path to trying to build that type of company. So
that's incredible.
Congratulations on all that success and all the things. So what's that like going from founder, CEO to executive chair? I mean, I think I asked the question on two parts. One is emotionally, what's it like? And then two is the tactical question, which is like, what does an executive chairman do? Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out. I was like, I don't know what an executive chairman does. So I think emotionally it's hard, right? Because, I think because I'm such a tinkerer. Sorry to hit that. I'm a tinkerer. I want to be in the weeds. I want to do stuff. And I was telling someone this recently about they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm obviously drift board, but I was like, I'm on these other two boards, a small public company and then a museum here in New York. And I was like, they're like, what do you think? And I was like, I hate boards. And I was like, that's my takeaway. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I want to get in the shit. And I'm like, I sit in these board meetings. I'm like, the only investor I could ever be like an activist investor. I'd be like Carl Icahn when it's crazy.
Take a great diet dinner.
Like I can't just sit here and be like, sit like this. It's just like, it doesn't work for me. And so like I
could keep chairs near you, so you throw them through the window.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, I have to actually make or do something. I can't just sit here like this. So I don't think I'm good in a general board sense. I think at Drift, it means, being exec chairs there is different. I'm pretty involved. I meet with the team every week. Meet with Scott every week. I do public speaking. I do all that kind of stuff, outside brand stuff, mostly some internal stuff, but like
great podcasts.
Yeah, great podcasts. I'm doing that kind of stuff for Drift. So, but I'm still learning what exec chair is. I'm meeting other ones to try to teach me.
So this is recent. I've come up with this idea that I think I might write a book of other people's stories. Those cool. Guys. And I think it's gonna be titled.
I think you're better looking than Tim Ferriss.
Yeah,
we have similar barbers.
Yeah.
When the wire hits.
Oh.
So
it's a great name. I know.
That's a great name. You better.
My handle's I Grow Brands. I'm a brand guy, and I'm very like my kids. They got special names. Like I'm like a naming guy.
God.
So it's when the wire hits.
You should lock that down.
Yeah, I should actually. I should have said.
I'm gonna buy the domain.
Delete it. Take it out. We wrote no title. But I
already bought the domain.
It's about you talked about it's emotional to change from CEO to the executive chair, but you've had, I think, 6 exits. So you've had wires hit multiple times.
Yeah.
Luckily.
Luckily.
Yeah.
The number was transposed.
Yeah.
What's the bullshit?
So what is what's it like for you? Has it changed over the years? Like can you go back in your mind just for half a second to the first time a wire hit when you sold what was Buyer Zone and you were part of that?
Yeah.
Was that it?
We sold Compete. We sold.
So which one? Like, if you go back,
I think Compete was the most meaningful because I was the founder, right?
Yeah.
So that was more meaningful than something else.
Did it hurt?
Did it hurt?
Yeah, we interviewed a guy the other day. He was like, he went into a deep depression.
The entrepreneur's epilogue is how he described it.
So the next day he goes, the phone stopped ringing, the lawyers were gone.
Yeah.
Everybody was there. He just handed the baby off. There was no earn out.
I think being an entrepreneur is a constant battle of depression.
Yeah.
Wait. Say that again?
I think being an entrepreneur is like a constant battle of depression.
Talk about that, please.
Yeah, I think I don't know, I don't think we'd talk about that. But I think if you look at makers, and I don't think it's just entrepreneurs. I think it's like a certain personality type that wants to go back in and test and do it over again, whether they're a writer and they're writing books, whether they're, and I learned this because I had this coach who was mainly doing Brad Stulberg, these high performance athletes that he would deal with, Olympians, those guys who run ultras,
crazy motherfuckers,
crazy dude. But the more that he would talk to me about the psychology, I was like, oh wait, that's the same. It's the same thing. That's in my brain of what is this person that has this thing that has to constantly prove and do it again and do it again. It's one thing to be created a product entrepreneur, do it one time, but to continue to do it again. I always say, that's why I always say look, if you start one company, then it's okay, you're naive. If you start 2 companies, questionable. If you start 3 or more things, then it's you're certifiable, you're crazy because you have something that's unmet that you have to why do you have to keep proving yourself? what is this chip on your shoulder that you have that you're like, I'm going to do it again?
My friends call me a broken toy.
Yeah, broken toy. Yeah. And so like, it's funny. This guy, George Zachary, who's a amazing investor in Silicon Valley, was a friend, said that, and he invested like in all the greats. And he said like, oh, when we talk about entrepreneurs, he's like, his thing was like all the great entrepreneurs that he's met have had some traumatic experience in their life, whether it was picked on or their dad or their mom or something has happened early in their life. And that is the thing that keeps them continually proving and proving and proving. And like, and it is that like, that thing that they have, because if they don't have, and in sports psychology, you talk like, there's darkness and light, right? There's like something that's like getting you to do this. Cause you know what? Most humans, almost everyone would just give up, would be like, fuck this shit. Yeah, this is too hard. I ain't doing this, because like, why would they? It doesn't make any sense. So there has to be something more inside, that burning inside of you to continue to do this. And because of that, you have these highs and lows, and you have this constant, I think like the lows are depressive states. Like you get into depressions and then you get the highest highs. I think the thing that's different, it's not like low grade or constant depression. It's like depression, peaks, depression, peak, like whatever. And so like, yeah, selling them, I definitely have had those. I think
I have them daily. I do.
Yeah, we would have them
in the AM. There's like sometimes you get a peak, and then the PM.
That's probably why. That's probably why your next business is cannabis.
I know. That's why it was like the first like 2 years or like year and a half of Drift, when we were trying to figure it out. I'm like, every day Elias and I would talk and be like, why the fuck did we do this again? Because every day it'd be like peak, low, high, and then you'd be like, oh my God, what are we doing? Why did we do this shit again?
I have not had the wire. Like I've had like little wins and little exits, investments, but I speak for myself. I haven't had like the big exit where the wire drops. And I always think about it because I know I want it. And part of the reason why I'm like, we have businesses and they're all performing at different levels, and we have more than one business, definitely. And I heard that. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be as depressed.
You'll buy some stuff and then you'll be like, okay.
Yeah. No, but I buy stuff anyway.
Yeah, it's like that
like
thing.
I don't not treat myself. I know a lot of like tech entrepreneurs that went through the booms and like they didn't know how to buy stuff. Yeah. Right? Like I know how to buy stuff. Yeah.
I did it that. I didn't for a long time until recently.
You're learning your way.
But it's like poker, right? Yeah. I mean, not to sort of make it, not to try to simplify something that's complex, but like you look like the Michael Jordan effect, right? Why did before big games he went out the night before and just gambled his face off? He didn't need that money. No. It's building companies is like playing poker. It's at that point they're bargaining chips.
It's all psychology.
It's all psychology. It's like
I just heard one of Jordan just because you brought up Jordan.
Yeah.
He wore a different brand new pair of Jordans. He's the one that started the brand new sneaker trend for athletes.
He did.
He wore a brand new pair of Jordans every single game. So he wore 180 pairs of sneakers, brand new, because he said the feeling of putting a brand new sneaker on when you're a kid made you feel invincible.
It did.
And he wanted that feeling every
oh my God, that's amazing.
Game. So it's all psychology.
Well, that movie's coming out. I think it's like April or something. That new movie that's going to talk about like ultimately the power of partnership and brand, which is kind of full circle.
Yeah, I forgot his sports coach, Grover. Tim Grover. Like if you listen to read, he's written some books like Relentless and a couple others, and there's some podcasts. He's interesting to talk to because he was his coach and Kobe's coach, and he would only do one person, and he's like hard ass, but he would only do one person, and only when Jordan retired, Jordan said, "I want you to meet Kobe Bryant," and gave him to Kobe.
That's amazing
as a coach, but like but he's all about like
the head game, the
head game.
Well, it's like one of my favorite books is $1 Trillion Coach. Bill Campbell. That mindset. Never got to meet him, obviously.
So I think we should wrap. I just want to say that this is what Forward Obsessed is all about, right? It's about just breaking through depression and continuing forward, and the pivots and the progress, and you to hear that like that early time where you had to go through the layoffs and how it felt to you, and to see that you continue to do it and continue to own companies. Yeah. You are the definition of entrepreneur, and it's not a piece of shit term anymore. to parrot back what you said. this was an incredible interview, and just for the audience, I'm sure they'll find you because you are a brand. Yeah. But you know, if you want to say what you're doing, where you are, and how people can potentially catch up with you or follow you, by all means, please.
Sure. So I'm DCancel, DCANCEL on Instagram, Twitter, what have you, everything else. So hit me up. I'm mostly on Instagram right now. I don't really use Twitter that much anymore. And so hit me up. I'm in New York, stop by New York, and I'm trying to get into art. So let's go look at some art. Yeah,
no doubt.
Thank you for listening to Forward Obsessed. Please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app. This episode was hosted by Pete Senna and David Salinas from the Digital Surgeons Podcast Studio in New Haven, Connecticut. Special thanks to our AV crew, Steve Walter and Meg Olson. Forward Obsessed is produced by Robert Roach. If you'd like to contact our team, visit us at forwardobsessed.com.